Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome to the Sean O'Connell Show. Glad to be back with you after some PFL duties, a little big business going on as we march toward really the highlight of summer. The 4th of July is coming this weekend. I hope you have big plans. If you don't have big plans, I hope that whatever happens spontaneously works out to be exactly what you're looking for. We're going to have 3 shows this week, and then we'll send you into a long weekend. And, of course, as always, we will do our best to keep you informed and entertained over these next 3 days. My guy, James Peterson, was holding it down all last week on the Sean O'Connell Show. He and the Brown Bear did a phenomenal job when I was able to join and able to listen in. I thought it was really good stuff. And by design, I thought, you know what? We're dog days of summer-ish, approaching the dog days of summer. There's not going to be as much going on. No, there was a ton going on. And so there's a lot to discuss. Caleb Desnoyers is now in Utah. He is skating for your Utah Mammoth after being selected number 4 overall in the NHL draft. Ace Bailey, you talk about the rumor mill stirring, buzzing. I think that the way his team handled that whole situation is simultaneously like poor mismanagement, but also at the end of the day, he showed up and he said the right things and made everything look like a giant false alarm. So even though there was that red flag, it ended up being a false flag. So now we get to see what Ace Bailey grows into for the Utah Jazz.
Yeah, did you see Sarah Todd's great reporting on that, by the way? About
as always.
Just how false flag that actually was, at least from Ace Bailey's perspective, from his representative's perspective. They obviously were, in particular, Omar Cooper was really trying to engineer something. Ace didn't seem to be part of that at all.
And by the way, he's not even the official licensed agent.
No.
He's just like one of the guys, and this is something that unfortunately has always existed in sports, but these people have more power and influence than they ever did because we're in the NIL era, and the bagmen are now running the show in a lot of ways. As far as I could tell, that's what this Cooper guy is. He's one of the bagmen. He's one of I'm the family friend who thinks I know what's best. I'm the guy you call uncle growing up, even if I am dubiously blood related. And I'm going to try and attach myself to this young person's success and see if we can all come out ahead of the game here. And look, there's been times where it's worked out nicely for individuals, and there's times where it has been absolutely disastrous for the parties involved. And I think that the wisdom prevailed, the cooler heads prevailed, the more professional and dialed-in people prevailed here. And at the end of the day, Ace Bailey showed up, and the Utah Jazz are happy with their pick. Now, it was fun to have a little bit of controversy, I suppose, because we have to get back to the Utah Jazz being one of the least interesting teams in the NBA.
Hey, big move they made today, though. OC, did you see?
They got rid of one of their veterans.
They waived Johnny Juzang. Huge move.
Hey, good for Johnny Juzang. He's going to end up as a number 11 on a team that probably goes and wins some playoff games. He's a good player.
I mean, you could argue he was number 11 on the Jazz. So I'm not sure. I agree with how good a player he is, OC.
Maybe number 14 then. He's going to stay in the NBA. He's going to be somewhere.
We'll see. He's got one skill. He's really good at it. He's a really good shooter. Will Hardy has even said you got to have more than just shoot well to be in the NBA, specifically talking about Johnny Juzang.
He's got
so we
decent
shall
size.
see.
We'll see how it goes. In any
Good luck
case,
to him, though.
If that is the most exciting thing about your team, and that's going to continue to be like the Utah Jazz right now are a franchise that I know that we have to cover, and I know people in the organization, and I'm like, all right, cool, but I also am fully aware, and as are all of you listening, that we're going to get to, I don't know, December, and realize, oh, it's another awful year.
And they kind of want to do that again, OC. I know Austin Ainge famously answered your question about tanking to say you won't see that this year, specifically the way you framed it,
which is
manipulating minutes. But
which is my bad for giving him that out.
Right. But I know he said that. I know he's on record as saying that, and it made the rounds all over the place, all over the NBA. But they do not – there's no way they're interested in letting their first-round pick go to Oklahoma City. And what that means is they have to be at least the 7th worst team in the NBA and have the lottery work out so that they have the 7th or higher pick in the NBA draft. So what that really means is there's going to be more tanking now. Are they going to manipulate minutes the way they did? Maybe not. They're going to try to trade away more veterans and do it another way.
I'll say this, James. If they do manipulate minutes, I'm going to show up.
Hammering them.
I'm going to show up occasionally and just be like, hey, I thought you guys weren't going to do this. And then they'll pull my press pass and everyone will be fine.
They'll be like Sean O'Connell, you're going to come to more press conferences? And they'll be like, won't see that this year.
Okay, I plan on showing up every week to talk to you about this.
Austin, won't see that this year.
Won't see that this year. Wait, why? What? Oh, they pulled my press.
You're like, joke's on you. James is going to say the exact way I want to word it every time.
Won't see that
just
this year
send
either.
him.
And then poor James gets pulled because of his guilt by association. All right, look, I'm not here. There's more interesting things for me
definitely
to get into, and you guys did a great job of covering all this, and we are going to have Sarah Todd on the show today, and so we'll jump in to some of that.
And she texted me after I asked her on Friday, hey, can you come on the show Monday? And she said, it could be, the situation's going to be completely different by Monday. And I said, that's fine. We'll talk. I think your story's still great. We'll still talk about how it got to that point, and then we'll give the latest. She was absolutely right. The situation is completely different. So there's a lot more to talk about than the Ace Bailey drama, but because she did such a good job reporting on the people around him, the people managing his career up to this point, Omar Cooper in particular, it's still worth revisiting.
I will say this, okay? Even though I probably share the opinion that a lot of people do, that this Omar Cooper, like, not even just him individually, but that character written into whatever story that a lot of these young people have in revenue-producing sports at the college level and then the draft process, that character you want to see eliminated from sports. But we do need to acknowledge, and we do need to be careful about just sort of a fundamental lack of understanding that can be the case as to why you can't just cut those people out of your life, right? I know that it's like the black and white, the easy thing for us to say is, you can't let that guy be involved. Well, what if that guy is your uncle? What if that guy at some point put a roof over your head? Or what if that gal at some point put food on your table? It's not as easy as we like to make it, and that lack of understanding for some of us, not all of us, because you don't paint any population, including fan bases, with a broad brush, but that tone-deaf sort of response to it sometimes can indicate like kind of what people are saying when they're like, hey, you don't want to go play in Salt Lake City. They don't understand you. They don't welcome you. It's not a culture that you're going to find people like you, whatever. If you're a young black man and you get drafted by the Utah Jazz and that wasn't something you were super interested in, and then a couple of rumors start coming out because whoever, associate, friend, uncle, has planted seeds in certain places, and then you watch a fan base just destroy that person online with, by the way, some heavy racial undertones to like 5% of that conversation, that is probably not the best look for Salt Lake City. So if you were part of that, let's be careful, okay? And that'll lead me to the next thing we're talking about here. And I'm not going to avoid talking about it, but it is something that you do need to be careful talking about, because we are looking at a situation that might be, and I realize exactly what I'm saying when I make this claim. This might be the ugliest moment in the Holy War rivalry ever. If this Jake Retzlaff situation is not handled properly the rest of the way, and if people don't talk about this properly the rest of the way, this could shape up to be the ugliest moment in Holy War rival history. Because what's happening now, and this situation can and will change, the civil suit that was brought against Jake Retzlaff accusing him of sexual assault was denied and refuted by his lawyers in a statement last week. And the denial came with actually it was a Utah player that did this. That's already ugly. That's already insanely complicated and crazy to have in a legal filing. Not only is my client innocent in this civil case, but it was actually a Utah football player. And remember, Utah football was not involved in this at all. This was a BYU story, and then the statement from the Retzlaff lawyers, this was actually a Utah football player. As far as I have seen, someone yet to be named. And then what happens? Firestorm of reaction online to that. Simmers down. The next day, reports out there that Jake Retzlaff is seeking transfer destinations because he is going to be forced to serve a 7-game suspension at BYU, regardless of the outcome of the civil case. Part of that legal filing I just mentioned was the defense of consent. This was all a consensual experience, and that, of course, is an honor code violation. So in this, the quote-unquote best case scenario for Jake Retzlaff, where he is found civilly not liable or innocent, then he is still, according to his own defense, guilty of an honor code violation. And so BYU is in a situation where they have to do something about that. The only other thing they could have done is say, well, actually, we already handled this behind closed doors, but that's not a possibility for them because the athletic department and BYU representatives have already said, we didn't know about this until now, right? So they're painted into a corner by their own policies to say, well, we got to suspend this guy. We have to do something. And the reports are that it's going to be a 7-game suspension. And then the next report is he has no interest in serving that suspension, so now he's seeking to transfer somewhere else. Sources that I trust have said one of the places that he made overtures was actually the University of Utah, and that was refused. That kind of doesn't matter.
We saw that floating around Twitter this weekend, too. Other people had obviously heard the same kind of things, so I'm glad you were able to confirm that, OC. And he probably wouldn't have been okay being backup quarterback anyway because this offense is designed around Devin Dampier, and he's going to be the starter.
And by the way, Jake is not. I don't think is. He's not analogous to Devin Dampier from a skills standpoint. He's good at different things. So
absolutely,
you're probably not bringing him in to be your backup if you have other options. So that's like what we're now through the like 7th step in the rumor mill process, and then reported today, the young woman involved has now dropped the civil suit. And that leads the conspiracy theorists out there to say this was all by design, someone trying to get Jake Retzlaff off the BYU football roster. And that brings me to the point I just made. This potentially could be the worst moment, the ugliest moment, the dirtiest, grimiest, the most disgusting moment in the Utah-BYU rivalry history. Let the truth be the thing that forms your opinion on this. Not what you read on a blog, not the message board, not my cousin's girlfriend knows this girl's mom, and this girl's mom said this, and they're big Utah fans. And that, just please. This is somebody's life. Actually, multiple somebody's lives. Because now there's at least 3 parties involved here. This young woman made the assertion that something terrible happened to her. Don't let that get lost in the, well, I care about BYU or I care about Utah more. Her assertion was that something terrible happened to her. And by the way, this is 2 years ago that she went to the authority. She went to the hospital. This is not just she like posted something online. She went through a process that I have never been through, obviously, but that many people describe as being terrifying and humiliating. Okay? She went through that. Now, I don't know what happened, and I'm not pretending like I know what happened, but her perception, at least, at one point, was that something terrible happened. And she went to great lengths 2 years ago to figure out whether or not there was recourse for her, okay? So, obviously, that's one person's life who's been affected by this. Jake Retzlaff was going to be the king of Provo all fall long, okay? This is a guy who was going to have, maybe still will, but was going to have a couple $1 million coming into his bank account as a college football player. He was going to be the undisputed leader of an offense on a team that I think is going to be pretty dang good this year, all right? That is obviously a good outcome for any college football player. To be a star quarterback at Brigham Young University, it's a pretty high-quality outcome for you, especially with what they're doing with NIL and all that. So that is not the case anymore. Now, 1st of July, he's got to find some new school to go ply his trade at, and the transfer portal window is closed, but I verified it this morning. He is a grad. He got his degree in April, according to, again, sources I trust, which means that the rules will be a little bit different for him potentially as a graduate transfer as far as immediate eligibility goes. He should be able to find a destination, put in the appeal. I'm a grad transfer. I have nothing left that BYU owes me or that I owe them. Even the old system says grads can transfer and be immediately eligible. So otherwise, he'd be in a situation where he's effectively choosing a 7-game suspension over a 1-year suspension. And that, again, this is somebody's life and livelihood, which is not what we used to say in college sports, but it is absolutely your livelihood now. Plus your reputation. This is going to follow Jake Retzlaff for 2 decades at least. People are going to remember, oh, where's that name from? Oh, that's right. Oh, he was accused of this. And we'll speak honestly about it. Half of the people that he meets are going to be like, oh, man, can you believe it? Women. Ugh. And the other half are going to be like, wow, you are a predator.
Yeah, they don't want to be associated with you at all. Yeah.
Like, that affects your life. And now a third party has been brought into this with whoever is being accused, although not by name, at least publicly not yet, as the Utah football player who actually perpetrated this evil. And then, again, the assertion from the Jake Retzlaff legal team is that this young woman took something terrible that happened to her, and instead of assigning blame to the perpetrator, said, how can I find a benefit from this and blame it on somebody else? And remember the timing of when this happened. It's not star quarterback at BYU, Jake Retzlaff, that this person was targeting. These accusations are, it's a year and a half, basically, almost 2 years old.
In November 2023.
November 2023. So more than a year and a half old, right? A year and a half ago, Jake Retzlaff was not a household name even in the state of Utah. So
I didn't even know he was on BYU's team in 2023.
I didn't either.
So
we didn't.
That's how much of a non-household name Jake Retzlaff was. He got his first chance to start the following season. At the end of the season, did not do near as well as he did in 2024. So there you go.
So
I guess I did know he was on the team because it was 2023 that he got his chance. But
there was absolutely no indication that he was going to be the starting quarterback at BYU for an 11-win team. Okay?
Right.
So again, I'm saying this because we always evaluate these things on the surface level, and most of us consume a lot of our news now through social media, through Twitter, through things like that. And what you're getting is like the 160 characters or 140 characters or whatever it is of Pete Thamel saying, like, now the lawsuit's dropped. And you think, oh, well, I know what that means. This is a young lady who was just trying to destroy BYU football through this accusation. There were, at that time, as disgusting as it is to even play that thought out, at least in my opinion, there were other players on BYU's roster at that time that you would have targeted with a false accusation if you were trying to undermine BYU football.
Yeah. And the other thing to keep in mind with this is there are more reasons than it not actually being true, the claim not actually being true, for a lawsuit to be dismissed.
100%.
For it to settle for anything other than you're liable, you're not liable, guilt, the lawsuit version of guilty, not guilty. Like, so we need to make sure we're still giving all parties the benefit of the doubt.
That's right.
It's imperative that we do that.
Yes, you're absolutely right, James. This lawsuit being dropped could be a settlement off the record.
Yeah, it could be.
It could be her legal team saying, look, just like you didn't have the correct amount of proof to make this a criminal case back in November, we don't have the evidence necessary to declare him liable right now, and so you're going to just go through this painful process, and it's going to be expensive. So maybe, like, there are a dozen or more reasons why this is the case right now, and the timing of it, I understand why people are going to make assumptions and whatever, but let's do our best on the Utah side of things, on the BYU side of things. Let's do our best to not let this become like a truly grimy, drag everyone through the mud type moment in rivalry history. Because at the end of the day, there are no winners here. This is not a win. Jake Retzlaff being off of the BYU football roster because of this is not a victory for Utah football. All right? The case being dropped is not a win for BYU football. And the blame being placed on a Utah football player who, according to the legal filing, is like kind of a low-level player or whatever, is not a win for the BYU fan base. This is not a win for anybody.
It's not even necessarily, like I just mentioned, it's not even necessarily, I don't know if win is the right term, the truth that Jake Retzlaff is completely he should be completely exonerated for something like this. We just don't know.
That's right.
Where I'm going to give him that benefit of the doubt that, hey, maybe it was what his team said it was. It was a completely consensual thing, and that unfortunately is still against the rules at BYU, and so that's why he's leaving. But you know what? Maybe it also was that it was more than it was something outside of consent, and this young woman, unfortunately, and her team, unfortunately, just didn't have enough proof to win the case, so they're dropping it, like you said. So we have to just stay to the facts, like you said, and make sure that we are giving the benefit of the doubt as much as we can to all parties involved with this, and let's just try to move on from it as quickly as possible.
That's the thing.
Honest with you,
like, the best case scenario here is that everyone just be allowed to pick up the pieces and move on with their lives in the most effective way possible.
Yeah, we wish Jake all the best of luck finding a new place to play next year. We absolutely do.
Well, I'll say this: if Jake Retzlaff is guilty of what he's accused of, I don't wish him anything.
No, but as it stands right now, I wish him the best.
And I said it before, and I'll say it again: if this truly was a false accusation designed only to be a false accusation, then there should be a serious and negative consequence for the accuser. But because we have no way of knowing which is true, the two people involved in these situations are the one who actually know what happens. This is not like a Ray Rice punching his wife on camera situation.
Don't have it on camera.
You don't need, I don't need any context to that. All right. Yeah. That's like, I know you're guilty. I know you're in the wrong, because that reaction is never okay in the situation that I witnessed with my own eyes. Because I don't have that knowledge, and I nobody else does. Those two people do. The thing that they agree upon is that they were alone together. And beyond that, we don't know anything else. So somebody here is pretty seriously in the wrong, it sounds like. And that person deserves major consequences. But because I can't tell you which of those people it is, I can only approach this from the sports perspective and the fan perspective and the observer perspective. And seeing what we're seeing and the accusations flying around and the conversation getting more and more conspiratorial and disgusting by the minute, pump the brakes, everybody. It is not a win for you that BYU's honor code is restrictive. It's not, Utah football fans. It's not. It's not a victory for you. It's something you make fun of constantly, and then when it benefits you, I'm throwing up the air quotes, when it benefits you, when you feel like it did something good for your football team by getting somebody kicked out of school, that's not a win for you.
Now it's a good thing that it's restrictive. Like,
it's not, right? It's not. No. So let's be adults about this and realize that these are young people and that relationships amongst young people are complicated. And by the way, a hell of a lot more complicated than they were 20 years ago, 25 years ago when some of us were in college, because now you've got social media and all that stuff. There were people on my team at the University of Utah that had accusations like this levied against them that did not become public at all. It wasn't the starting quarterback. It wasn't someone of this level of import to either fan bases, or really to any fan base. But this kind of thing has been happening for years, and you didn't know about it. And guess what? You didn't get to form an opinion and throw it out on Twitter and make a declaration as a BYU fan, as a Utah fan. This is the truth, and this is why it happened this way, because you don't know. So let's be grown-ups about this and not let it become the danger is that it becomes something that ruins the rivalry in a way where it makes it so much more malicious. And by the way, Jake Retzlaff's legal team, I'm talking to you. If you don't actually believe what you put in that legal filing, shame on you.
Yeah, if that's just strategy, yeah, that's awful.
You should be disbarred, or I don't know if you have to pass the bar to be a civil litigator, I think. It's disgusting. The problem we have here is the best case scenario is just kind of everyone just picks their pieces up and moves on. And the worst case scenario here is disgusting for at least one of these parties and probably more likely two. That is horrific. So I'm going to try to leave it at that. We'll talk about BYU's quarterback situation without Jake Retzlaff moving forward. I will tell you where he ends up if he ends up somewhere. But as far as the he said, she said, until we get an actual truth out there that we can rely upon, let's be grown-ups about it. Please, I beg all of you on both sides, Utah, BYU, please treat it with the seriousness that it deserves. All right, we got to take a break here. I haven't even told you what's coming up on the show today. We got a lot to talk about with, old friends. Gordy Chiesa is going to swing by. Tom Callahan reacting to the NHL draft. Sarah Todd, as I already did mention, is joining us at 1 o'clock. James Peterson is here behind the glass. I'm Sean O'Connell. You're listening to Utah's #1 sports talk, ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM, proud part of Utah's ESPN radio network. Well, welcome back to the Sean O'Connell Show. Welcome in Gordy Chiesa, our resident NBA guru. We usually get him on Tuesdays. It's a treat to have Gordy on a Monday. Gordy, what's up?
OC, welcome back. I'm doing fine. Thank you.
All right. So you and I have not had any conversations since the Utah Jazz selected Ace Bailey. Let's just take me through your reaction to the fact that Ace was available there and that the Jazz went and grabbed him.
Yeah, first thing is that my action was one of joy. He's a major talent. Let's not forget now, NBA is a talent league. He's a freakish athlete. 6'10", 205 pounds. He has to grow into his body, but he has all the tools to be a tremendous player, and that he's a shot creator, off the dribble, catching fire jump shots in transition, trying to dunk on your head. He has all the tools to be really an exceptional player. Now, with that said, like all young guys, OC's defense is behind. He has to learn to play defense both on ball, off ball. Hopefully he will. But as far as the fifth pick of the draft, the Jazz had to take him. Like, there was no doubt in my mind once I saw that Kneppel went to the Charlotte Hornets, the Jazz were going to take him at number 5, and I was quite ecstatic.
Do you think that's an overdraft on Con, or were you as high on him as Charlotte was?
No, yeah, overdraft. I like him. In other words, he's a knockdown shooter. For the listeners right now, he's a 6'6", I'll call him a small forward, has range jump shot. And he's good. He got some toughness. Just that he, Sean, I would have took him more like 9 through 13. This is me saying it, because the top of the NBA draft, philosophically, you're trying to get somebody that eventually could be a franchise difference maker. If not, be a potential all-star. If not, be a major contributor, either as your 4th or 5th best player on a 53-win team. And so that's the criteria when you're picking high in the lottery. And high means what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
All right, so back to Ace Bailey. There was, of course, this rumor and innuendo, even in the pre-draft process, that there was only 3 places he wanted to end up, and he was trying to sabotage and undermine his visits, his interviews with other teams, and the people in his camp were trying to figure out a way to get him to New Orleans or whatever. And he ends up with the Utah Jazz, and we know what the reputation for the Utah Jazz is for people who have not been to Utah for the most part. So when all of that stuff, that extracurricular stuff was stirring, what was your thought?
That delusionary, that his camp read it wrong, and that the rules that you have to report to training camp, and what he did yesterday at the press conference, he's practicing right now as we speak. So that's just all bravado by the agent. Remember, Ace Bailey is the agent's only client. And so he was trying to create a false narrative. Unfortunately, not you, not James Peterson, not Gordon Chiesa, and all those Jazz fans that are intelligent people, they didn't fall for that trap.
So he averaged what, almost 18 points in college, and
yes,
7 rebounds. What is the expectation for a guy like that? How when you're getting him ready at the NBA, right? And you're saying, here's what his physical traits are. Here's what he saw for a non-tournament team, by the way. That's another conversation entirely. You see his numbers in college, and you're the Utah Jazz drafting him. What do you think that translates to for a rookie year in the NBA?
A double-digit scorer. So in other words, whether you start him or not in the beginning, is that he's going to average minimum 10 points a game, if not more, at age 18 years old. That's the minimum. And I'm lowballing it. He's got talent. And so whether you start him or not, I call him a running small forward. He's so lanky. So if Larry Marketing is still here, which I hope he is, and John Collins, opt into his contract, which we all knew, they're probably off the bench. And then it's Cody Williams factor and the Taylor Hendricks factor. As far as those guys are going to try to all compete, I'll call them small forwards, stretch four. You can debate that. But this kid's got more talent than those guys, than Williams and Taylor Hendricks. And Larry Marketing's a tremendous player, and John Collins is actually an overachiever. So he should average double figures a game in the beginning and just take it from there.
Gordy, how often did a guy show up when you were a Jazz coach? How often did a guy show up maybe thinking like, I can't believe I'm in Utah, and then realize, oh, it's actually nice here, and before they left, whatever circumstance they left under, actually learned to love this place?
Correct. Most of them. The answer is yes. Again, 35 years ago, living in Utah was different than it is right now. So I'll be a classic example. I know I'm an older person. I get it. But 35 years ago, when I first moved here from big bad New York City, New Jersey area, I had the same thing of the false narrative. But once you live here, you really realize the beauty of it. Let's fast forward it. This generation, social media, etc., is even more accelerated. As far as 18, 19 years old, there's always a perception which is misconstrued. And once the guys get here, oh, by the way, living here is beautiful. And so instead of being in New York, L.A., Vegas, where there's 30 nightclubs, here for the young people, there's 7 nightclubs that are just the same. And so I always tell people that it's the exact same activity life how for young people, just that it's not as multitude. So, as I'll explain to you, and it's I'm sure he's happy to be here, and our summer league starts this weekend up at the University of Utah.
Gordy Chase is my guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show, talking the draft, the outcome of the draft, some other personnel moves in the NBA and with the Utah Jazz. They waived Johnny Juzang, and is he going to – what's his NBA future in your mind?
One, he can play in the league. 2, off-the-bench gunslinger. So he has to find a team between now and the first day of training camp in October that wants someone like him. And then he has to overachieve during training camp to try to win a guaranteed contract. As we speak right now, there probably won't be a team that'll give him guaranteed money, but it'll be a make-good contract. If he does, then next January 10th becomes, as far as guaranteed, January 10th, 2026. So this NBA thing, it's cruel. Suddenly, I'm making jump shots last year for the Utah Jazz. Now I'm out of work. And so what happens every year, there's 35 to 45 new players entering the league. Here's the math. 30 first-round picks will play on a team, and we'll say 15 second-rounders will make an NBA team, which means that 45 players in the NBA 4 months ago will be out of the league. Fight, and claw, and they try to get back in or go into Europe. So it's cruel. That's why you last in the NBA or NFL, Sean, for 10 to 15 years, you absolutely overachieved. That means that you have talent, you're able to overcome injuries, and most of all, you're a good teammate.
Colin Sexton is headed to Charlotte along with the second-round pick. Let's talk about the addition by subtraction first. Like, this is, in my opinion, the Utah Jazz saying, we're not going to manipulate minutes. We're just going to clear some points off this roster. How else should I be interpreting the Colin Sexton move?
No, well said. Again, he has interest. In other words, where it's the first part about that trade. Do you realize that Colin Sexton and Yusuf Nurkic have the exact same agent? So that was an easy trade for the Jazz and the Hornets. The agent's Rich Paul of Clutch Sports. And so they're probably talking about it from the last game of the season until it happened yesterday. And so you have the exact same agent. There's no interpretation as far as we weren't sure. Guess what? They were sure. So the Hornets get Colin Sexton left in his contract. It's just 1 year. And we know about Sexton. That guy is a tremendous talent, and he plays hard, and he's fiery. And that's what the Hornets need. They're starting over. And so that it makes sense for them. Now, for the Jazz have been bullied in the lane the last few years. Walker Kessler is a finesse center, running big man, defensive-minded. And Yusuf Nurkic is the direct opposite. I call him the Bosnian bully. This guy is he starts fouling in a game on layup lines. All right? And the learning point about that is that he'll give the Jazz a physical presence. Contractually, on his contract, only 1 year left. So both guys that were in a trade left in their contract was 1 year. With Nurkic, his contract this year is $19.3 million. So just say the worst scenario, it didn't work out. then the Jazz in the next summer of 2026, he's a free agent. If it does work out, we like him, then you sign him again as far as a new contract. And remember, when a guy has a 1 year left in his contract, I always talk about it in this way. Oh, by the way, we're engaged, but we're not married. So 1 year left in the contract, the team is engaged, but they're not married to the player. And that changes the whole dynamics, both for the player and also for the organization.
What do you think LeBron opting into a contract, a player option for, I think maybe the first time? What does that mean for LeBron?
That means LeBron is saying to them is that after this season, I probably will move on. That it worked out well, but not to the utmost. So they got one championship, which is hard to do, back in 2020. And now with Luka being there, they're going to try to get another one for this season, 25-26. However, LeBron's saying that if we don't, then I'm saying to you that I'm a year in advance. I'm going to try to move on to a team that needs me to get over the hurdle to be world champions again. He's going to break the record for most games played, most longest in the season, besides adding to the all-time greatest scorer. Now, if you're the Lakers right now, it's about the Lakers, not about LeBron anymore now. So once Luka got there, the dynamics changed within the organization. And now also with new ownership, it's even more dramatic. And you and I haven't talked about it. A $10 million franchise just got sold. And so now everything has changed for LeBron, not as far as his abilities, but as far as the peripheral things around him where he would dictate the terms all the time in his career. And now, for the first time, he's not at age 40. And so he's fortunate that he was able to be a great player for so many years, but now it's slightly altering his thinking.
Okay, so he opts in, and look, LeBron and Luka and that supporting cast, I know how nasty the West is, but it's not outside the realm of possibility. Something special could happen in L.A.
Correct. Absolutely. It could.
So,
yeah, but their problem right now is they need depth. They need big guys. So they're going to try to sign, and, today's a big day in the NBA. As of 4 o'clock this afternoon, Mountain Time, is that you're able to talk to other teams' free agents, and you can actually sign them, but you can't sign them officially until July 6th. So, for example, the Lakers are really small. I know it sounds weird saying LeBron's such a big person, but they're really small up front. So they're going to try to get Brook Lopez from Milwaukee as a stopgap guy, but he's good. In other words, he's a good rebounder, shot blocker, and he spaces the floor as a three-point shooter. So they're going to try to get him, I'm sure, today, and that will help the Lakers, if things fall into place, to be a contender in the West. So we'll see how it all plays out. And remember, Sean, 7 straight years now, a different NBA champion. So you and I are the smartest guys in the room, if you know what I mean, you and I. But Matt tells us that the odds are against a team repeating. So next year probably will be a new champion.
All right, Gordy, what's your list today?
All right, my list today was the draft, the recent draft. And so I did a list today because of BYU and the Utes. So this list today is the BYU Cougar players drafted since 2000. 2000 for the last 25 years. It's a short list. And the second part of the list, the Utah players since 2000 draft. All right, 2003 from BYU, Travis Hansen, 37 pick from Atlanta Hawks. 2004, Rafael Araujo, the 8th pick from Toronto, Brazilian. 2008, Trent Plastek, the 46th pick from my former employee, the Seattle Supersonics. And with Trent Plastek, he never played in the NBA. So he got drafted, went overseas right away, played in Russia for many years. 2011, Jimmy Fredette, the 10th pick in the draft by Sacramento. Quick side note, oh, by the way, that was the year that the Sacramento Kings took Jimmy Fredette over Kawhi Leonard, who was pick number 15 that year. All right, the other day, 2025, Yegor Demon was picked by the Brooklyn Nets at number 8 from Russia. And next year, Sean, I can't predict, but it seems to me that AJ DeBancer should be picked either 1, 2, or 3 in the draft. So just think about it. For the last 25 years, there's only been 6 players drafted by BYU. Let's go Utes quickly. Utah players drafted last 25 years. The year 2000, Hanno Metalo from Finland, the 40 pick of the draft by the Atlanta Hawks. 2005, when you were in school at the Utes, Sean, Andrew Bogut, the Australian,
Number
first
one.
pick, Milwaukee Bucks. 2015, DeLon Wright, 20th pick of the Toronto Raptors. 2016, Jakob Poeltl from Austria, the 9th pick, Toronto Raptors. 2017, Kyle Kuzma, the 27th pick by Brooklyn. He was traded that night to the LA Lakers. So the Utah Utes have not had a draft pick in 8 years. And hopefully with Alex Jensen, that will change. And so here we have two local schools that people follow. Besides Weber State, I get it. I left them out purposely, and so did Utah State. But these two schools that have been at Big 12, they've had very few draft picks over the years. And from the Utes' point of view, they got accelerated, and BYU has got it rolling right now as far as getting high-level talent. Thus, that's my list of today.
Gordy, glad we were able to catch up again. I've missed you, pal. Thanks for joining me.
Likewise. Thank you.
That's Gordy Chiesa, longtime NBA assistant coach, our resident NBA guru here on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Pleased to announce, by the way, Maroon 5 is coming to the Delta Center October 25th. Spence Checketts is giving away tickets every day this week on The Drive. Tickets are also on sale now. You can find details at ESPN700sports.com. Love talking to Gordy, his insight on these draft processes and, of course, these other off-season moves. Love it. Okay. Coming up, the hot lunch. It's very rare that you see a collective group of people be so bad at something that they just abandon that pursuit altogether. Usually we try to salvage these things. We try to save them, even against better wisdom. Well, for once, the Big 12 Conference just did the painful thing and cut it off. I'll tell you what I'm talking about next. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. All right, I know you already talked about this, James, but I have to. I have to weigh in on the preseason poll in the Big 12 Conference being eliminated entirely because we were so bad at it last year that they just decided to do away with this preseason thing. And by the way, coaches could not be happier. You want to talk about something that will put like a big old cheesy grin on Kyle Whittingham's face? I'm sure when he got this news, he danced a jig and giggled. You know, like, besides his own grandkids, I doubt there's very many things that can make him do that. But having interviewed him preseason for, I don't know, the last 20 years or so, every single time there's this, like, at very best, begrudging acceptance of the fact that these are talking points people find some level of interest in. And it's like so reluctant. Yeah, you know, it's great that we're thought of and respected and people think we're going to win, but they don't mean anything. Just like the mandatory doesn't mean anything. Every coach, and it's not just Kyle Whittingham, every coach has to say, well, look, great, but it doesn't mean anything. Or, yeah, it sucks that we're at the bottom. Doesn't mean anything, though. And now the Big 12 Conference at the cutting edge of innovation in college sports is finally just like, we suck so bad at this. Never mind. Just don't try to predict how it's going to be. Too much parity. There are too many teams that are going to get bulletin board material out of it. There are too many teams that are going to pat themselves on the back. We're just going to go let them play, and that just means we have to rely on other sources for their preseason polls because, of course, everyone else got a preseason poll. But the official Big 12 preseason coaches, and that's really like their SIDs, that poll is in the official media poll. It's gone. They're not doing it.
Yeah, we hate that on this show, and anyone who does what we do for a living, OC, is like, okay, really? We have no talking points for college football other than stuff we make up out of thin air for like 4 months, but now you're going to take away the one thing we have. Okay, great.
Which, by the way, was also made up out of thin air.
Yes, which was also made up out of thin air. No, tongue-in-cheek there. We'll be okay without the preseason media poll. But, yeah, you're absolutely right. Kyle Whittingham, in all the years that I've worked here, coming up, my 7th year here, a lot less than you have been interviewing him, but that I've been listening to his answers to those questions, it always seems to be, you have to appreciate the respect, but doesn't mean anything. We haven't done anything yet.
Yeah,
and then he used some more filler words to get out of respect for us asking the question, but basically that's all he really says.
You know what's going to be hilarious, by the way? Instead of getting that question at Big 12 Media Days of like, hey, you're ranked number 1 in the preseason poll.
Wherever you are in the poll.
You're number 6. Yeah. Hey, you're number 4. Instead of that being the question, it's going to be, hey, aren't you glad that there's no more preseason polls? So it's like the ghost of Christmas past. It's just going to haunt him no matter what.
No, and I was also going to say, pun intended with the cutting edge of innovation as they're cutting media day, preseason media day polls.
Here's the thing. I'm totally fine with this. We will still come up with our own expectations.
Yeah,
we'll go to the
we'll make our own
magazine. The ESPN's going to have one, and CBS Sports is going to have one.
Soon enough, the AP preseason poll, top 25 poll is going to come out too.
But here's a prognostication that I refuse to let go away. The all-conference teams, the preseason all-conference teams, they're far more interesting to me.
Yeah.
Because it's, all right, what players are we expecting? The team dynamic is, like last year proved it to us. We were just dead wrong. Arizona State won the conference in the preseason. People thought they had no chance of winning the conference. Evaluating players, though, you're usually more accurate. And now that might be because of familiarity and because of confirmation bias and things like that. But preseason all-conference lists are typically a lot more accurate and a lot more of a good like barometer of the great players in the conference. So I don't want those to go away.
I wish that there was because I don't the easy thing for what I prefer would be make it a watch list, but I don't really like the awards watch lists either. So maybe I just can't be pleased in this sort of thing, but I don't like the implication that this guy's already won a conference honor before the season starts. So
that's where the confirmation bias does get problematic at times.
For confirmation bias sake, but also just at a principle, it's like, okay, cool story. Someone thinks you're going to be good this year. The postseason, a lot of people know you were good this year. So I feel like if I'm not going to say I'm with you. But with what you're saying, I agree with you that they're very informative and they help us set the scene for the season. I don't like the implication that it's like this guy's won something already, which is different than the preseason media poll because they come out and say, this is our prediction. Yeah. If it was some kind of terminology that said we're predicting that this guy might be good, and I guess watch list would be that, but I don't really love the watch list either because it's like
the problem with the watch list is they don't put a cap on them.
Yeah, it's too many. Yeah.
So me and Jeff Schwartz used to laugh about this all the time.
Well, he's involved in the offensive line award, right?
That's the whole unit, the Joe Moore Award.
Yeah.
Right? But so for example, the Remington Award is for the center, right?
Yeah.
One year there were 60 centers on the watch list. 60.
But those watch lists,
half of the starters or projected starters in the country. Like he might be the best one in the country. No one believes that.
No.
Stop it.
But those watch lists are for people like Jeff Schwartz who are on these committees, right? They just want to that to help that.
It's more for the lazy AP voter.
Oh, okay.
Because like the Jeff Schwartzes of the world, he knows. Like he's he does the homework, and if somebody doesn't appear on a list, then
he's going to watch him anyway. Yeah.
For example, you're going to see Caleb Lomu starting to appear on the same kind of list that Spencer Fano was starting to appear on because of guys like Jeff Schwartz, because the conversations that happen in his group thread, he's screenshotted some of them to me, that happened in his group thread with all the other like great offensive line minds around college football. Those guys start to identify, oh, hey, Fano is amazing. But guess what? Guess who might be equally as good and even better as an NFL draft prospect? The guy on the other side. Those guys start to say that amongst each other, and then what do? They leak it to people like me because they all have relationships, and somebody calls Aaron Taylor and it's just like, hey, who's going to be the best tackle? Oh, the Spencer Fano kid's amazing. But also, hey, don't forget about the guy opposite him. And don't forget about the guy at Oregon, obviously, and don't forget about the guy at Alabama. But also, like, they're the taste makers, and then it's the rest of us who get to be lazy about it.
Yeah, so the watch list, though, are those committees for these awards saying these are who we've decided as a committee we're going to be keeping an eye on. But obviously, what you're saying, these great minds at the various positions that are part of these committees for these awards, they're not just sticking to the watch list.
Well, yeah, they're not sticking to the watch list. But like for the watch list's sake, it's effectively every upperclassman who's returning as a starter.
Yeah.
Makes an appearance on one of those lists.
You could win the Heisman this year. You could win the Joe Moore Award.
It's so ridiculous. What you really need to look at is what does Las Vegas say?
Yes.
Right? Vegas offers
they're the watch list.
They offer preseason Heisman odds on whatever it is, like 20 players. An official watch list would put 100 guys on there. So,
yeah. No, see, I think you nailed it. That's why I don't like the watch list. It's not watch lists
fluff.
It's not watch lists. It like in its entirety, all of them, everything about them are bad. It's like let's narrow it down a little bit. Let's give us something we actually can watch.
Guys, can we
for the casual fan?
I'm not going to watch 60 interior offensive linemen play.
Not doing it.
Can you give me an idea?
Can you give me
10? This Montana State kid is actually better than the guy at Notre Dame? Because if he's not, stop putting his name on the list. Anyway, speaking of names, Start Bench Cut is back, baby.
Let's go.
I've already put it up.
We tried to get you to do it on your limited appearances with us, OC, but you said, no, I need more time.
Yeah. I've
glad it's
put in at Real OC Sports. It's already on Twitter. The station accounts have already put it back out there. We're doing 2 Start Bench Cuts today. One is a positional Utah football one. The other one is where it's summer radio time, okay? summer outdoors. We're going to start, bench, and cut summer outdoor activities. We're going to start, bench, and cut Utah tight ends in the Power 4 era. That's next on the Sean O'Connell Show. ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. All right, buckle up, ladies and gentlemen. It's going to get worse from here. Start, bench, cut. I started with the easier ones, at least tried to start with the easier ones. I thought, coming back on the show, we'd get a little spicy today. Start, bench, cut. Let's go with summertime outdoor activities first, James, okay?
Oh, you going with the hard one. All right.
877-353-0700. Start one, bench one, cut one. A pool day, water park day, splash pad day, all right? Man-made outside in the water day.
Okay.
All right?
Lake doesn't count, people. Tubing doesn't count.
Well, because that's another option.
It's nature.
The nature outdoor in the water day, the beach day, the lake day, the float the river day. Okay, separate
right.
category.
Yeah.
So you're going to start or bench one of those. And then how about nighttime in the campfire?
Ooh.
Start, bench, cut, campfire nights, lake day, beach day, river day, pool day, water park day, splash pad day. Start, bench, cut.
So chlorine or sans chlorine water day.
Yeah. So you don't have chlorine in one. You do have sand and grit in your swimsuit in the other.
Yeah. So wait, where do reservoirs land? Because those are technically man-made.
Damn it, James.
I couldn't even keep a straight face to finish that sentence.
It's so terrible. It's so terrible.
I'm okay.
Well, technically, I'll say it's reservoir is a man-made water experience, and it is outdoors. So
I don't know where to put this.
we have more reservoirs, by the way, than we do lakes here.
We absolutely do.
Like every one of you who's like, I love being on the lake. You actually love being on the reservoir.
Yeah, the res.
Because like the only recreational lake that people actually use, Bear Lake and Utah Lake, right?
Yeah, that's probably right. I don't know if Lake Powell's not technically in Utah, but a lot of Utahns go to Lake Powell.
That's a reservoir.
Is that a reservoir? Okay.
That's it. The Glen Canyon Dam filled that bad boy up.
That's gonna, yeah. Or Hoover Dam by Vegas, also, or the Lake Mead,
So
Hoover
yeah, like
Dam area. Yeah.
okay, Strawberry Reservoir,
Yeah.
right? Pine View Reservoir,
Causey
Reservoir,
Reservoir. Okay.
Deer Creek Reservoir. All right,
So it's all man-made.
we have no real lakes.
We just stumbled upon a bigger issue here on the Sean O'Connell Show. No, I'm going to start campfire time,
Ooh, nice.
and I'm going to bench lake nature, natural air quotes,
natural outdoors in the water.
outdoors in the water. Maybe I go to somewhere else to actual natural. No, and then I'm going to cut the pool splash pad water park.
All right.
Day. Now, if you'd asked me this, if you'd asked 10-year-old James, 12, 13-year-old James, he would have started pool day, all that, and probably benched the natural one, because I've always loved campfire time. So
Yeah. All right. Okay.
or sorry, cut the natural water
You're-
and then
So, but you're cutting the pool day.
I'm cutting pool day now that I'm much more mature
Uh huh.
as a
Now that you have a car, you can actually
30-something-year-old, and I'm a father.
you can actually get to
So-
the lake now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what it was. Just becoming a father, I'm like, oh, look at all this perspective. The chlorinated water actually is the worst of the three.
Okay, we got mixed reactions on this one. Start lake day, bench pool day, cut campfires. Start pool, bench lake, cut campfire. What? How are we cutting campfires,
See,
people?
I'm gonna get irrationally angry if I hear one more OC.
Jaron Leake says start the beach or the lake or the float the river day, bench the campfire, cut the water park.
Okay,
That's
okay.
mine.
That's acceptable.
That's my list right there.
I will accept that.
I'm starting lake, beach, river. Sure. I mean,
Yeah, I haven't really been tubing much, but I always when I come across it, I'm always like, it looks like a lot of fun. I want to try that.
I'm bummed because my old like high school buddies, they're all for this weekend. They're all going to go float the Provo,
Yeah.
and I'm not going to be able to make it. And apparently, they've really boosted the prices. It used to be like $10. Now I think it's $50, which is wild. Inflation on
Yeah.
actual inflatables. I don't like that, but that's. I mean, yeah. So the river is cool, and standing there and fishing in a river is awesome. But you can't. The beach. We don't have like an ocean beach. The beach just trumps all.
Yeah.
Beach is like that. You're starting beach if you can get to a beach. Even the man-made beaches at our reservoirs, man-made beach at a man-made lake, those are phenomenal. So I'm going start the beach, lake, river day, bench the campfire, and even though I love a good water park, splash pad, pool day, I got to cut it because it can't stack up to the other two.
Does this mean your very lovely young daughters, cannot do splash pad day this summer because you've cut it?
I guess
Is
so.
that what that means for them?
Which, by the way, the splash pad, when you have really little children, is so great because you don't have to worry about anybody drowning.
Yeah. And kids love it.
The splash pads are phenomenal.
Kids, that's like if you had to ask them to start bench cut of the man-made water stuff, pool, water park, or splash pad, I'm sure a bunch of young kids would start the splash pad. Like that's how much fun they look like they're having in those splash pads.
The splash pads are so great. There's always the one weird kid who's like just parks themselves right over the top of the jet, so it's just spraying. And you're like, all right, kid, come on, move along. But everyone else is having a great time. All right, so 877-353-0700. Your outdoor activities, start bench cut. And then this one, we'll get to the actual football one. This one's, oh, you know what? 9653 just aired a very valid grievance.
Oh.
Monday grievance, the Uintas have over 500 lakes. You're right. That's my bad. The Uintas have a bunch of lakes. However, I don't think you can take motorized craft on any of them, if I'm not mistaken.
Maybe it's just
so a big feature of the lake day is like a jet ski, a boat.
Hey, but you could probably take your paddleboard out on them.
Paddleboard, kayak, canoe, rowboat, all great. The tube that you float in and your feet are dangling down there for the secret crocodile to eat your feet, whatever. All great. Thank you to 9653.
Yeah, that's our bad.
Thinking, that's my bad. It's a haughty, it's sort of a highbrow mentality to be like, well, if I can't have a boat on.
Was that Porter Larson who texted that in?
It probably was.
Porter spends like every weekend in the Uintas.
He's probably in the Uintas right now. That's probably his number.
He might spend it every day and still get here in time to produce the drive at 2:00. He loves the outdoors, and he loves that mountain range for sure.
1624 says, start the pool, bench the lake, cut the campfire. Beach is the most overrated thing in the universe. It's already 1,000 degrees. Let's add a fire within 6 feet. What are you doing? What? You're cutting campfires?
Campfire time. See,
and you're telling me beaches are overrated? Somebody find this person and make sure that they're mentally at full capacity before you let them drive.
Hey, I'm staying home all summer. How about that?
Start air conditioner, bench television, cut
anything
sunshine.
Outside.
Come on, man.
I see. Here's why
too many people cutting campfire, James.
I know. Here's why I love campfires the most. It's just there's not many things more relaxing than just sitting around outside, roasting whatever you want, marshmallows, hot dogs. My in-laws have they discovered something, maybe invented something called magic mushrooms, which is different than what you're thinking of.
I don't think your in-laws invented magic mushrooms.
But bacon wrapped mushrooms on a hot dog on a roasting stick with some cheese stick in there too.
That sounds
piece
awesome.
of a cheese stick. So we call them magic mushrooms. I've told my
that tells you how sweet and innocent this entire clan.
I've been like I think of something else when I hear magic mushrooms.
Imagine you're out in the Uintas, all right, and like James Peterson walks up. Would you like to try some of my magic mushrooms? You're gonna meet a lot of people who are just like, yes. And you hand them a cheesy bacon mushroom, they're gonna be
portobello
like,
mushroom.
They're gonna be like, I'm very disappointed.
I'd be like, how can you be disappointed with this?
I thought I was going to ride a unicorn to Mars, James. And you're like, nope, sorry, but the bacon's good.
The bacon's delicious. So anyway, roasting whatever of your choice, talking about whatever you want, telling stories, playing dumb campfire games. Like, I don't know. That's the best summer experience. One of the best summer experiences for me outdoors. And then, like, I don't know how you can pick pool or chlorinated water over a beach or a lake,
a campfire,
even tubing on the river, which is probably the third best out of those three things. Like that's still I would prefer over.
Remember, we're talking the campfire night. We're talking about the whole thing. All right.
Yeah.
So you're either bringing your own wood, or even better, you're scavenging. You're finding good wood. You're finding the right sticks.
Bring the old axe, hatchet, and
you're just like, oh, look at this rotted out piece. Yes, let's go burn this bad boy, right? You're lugging that back to the campfire.
You're staying up till you don't even know how late it is because who cares?
Like, you're building either the teepee or the log cabin in the fire pit, right? If you're hardcore like me, you're trying to use one match. Or if you're even more hardcore than me, my buddy Josh
Quentin
Tyler,
Steele.
he won't start a fire unless he's like doing bow and drill or flint or whatever. That's gangster, okay?
Yeah.
That whole process of starting a fire connects you with your ancestors, man. Makes you feel something.
Plus, if you're a closeted pyro, this is your chance.
It's your chance.
This is your chance, of course, responsibly. We don't want to be the ones starting any wildfires, okay?
Yeah, you got to do it the right way.
You have your chance to be like, oh, man,
the
fire.
Let's go. The tinfoil dinners. You're
tinfoil dinners.
Staring into the coals. You're roasting marshmallows. You're laughing when the smoke blows at your one buddy's face the whole time. Like and then when it's time to put the fire out, invariably you're not going to have enough water. So what do you have to do? What do you have to do, James?
When nature calls.
Exactly. That's all awesome. Anyway. Okay.
I'm okay with you benching that experience. I'm not okay with these other people cutting it.
Yeah,
come on.
Don't do it. Don't cut it. All right. Start, bench, cut tight ends in the Power 4, Power 5 era. Dalton Kincaid, Brant Keithy, Jake Murphy.
I am starting.
Wait.
Oh, you're not ready yet.
I did that on purpose. I wanted a dramatic pause.
Okay.
And then I wanted to interrupt you because you were thinking this through.
Because I also had a dramatic pause, yes.
So here's the thing, right? Dalton Kincaid had truly like one really phenomenal season. Okay? Jake Murphy was a very solid performer who was never featured in the offense the way that the other two guys were. And, of course, Brant Keithy had the injuries that plagued him. So there are so many ways you can approach this one.
And are we saying how many really good years did Keithy have, or good years did he have? He probably had at least two, right? 2021 was his best.
Yeah.
The first Pac-12 championship year.
He's like 2.5 out of 6, basically, is what you got from Brant Keithy.
And Dalton had also a really good year in 2021, that first Pac-12 championship year, but it was the next year, the second one, where he truly starred.
So just for your edification here, all right? Dalton Kincaid was really good in 2021. He was spectacular in 2022. He finished with 31 games in a Utah uniform. He had 107 catches for 1,400 yards and 16 touchdowns. Okay? In 3 years, effectively, although he really only played for 2 of them, only played consistently for 2 of them. Brant Keithy had a ton of production, 60 games, 183 receptions, 2387 on his yardage. He scored 22 touchdowns in 22 receiving touchdowns, and he scored 6 rushing touchdowns. So his from scrimmage yardage is double what Dalton Kincaid produced. Almost double, 1,000 yards more. Dalton Kincaid had 1 rushing attempt for 4 yards. Brant Keithy was doing everything, right? And Jake Murphy, again, just not featured nearly as much. He had 30 games, 63 catches, 830 yards, 10 touchdowns. But when you asked him, he was available most of the time. So, start, bench, cut, Keithy, Kincaid, Murphy.
I really want to start Brant Keithy because I think he is the better player of between he and Dalton Kincaid. Now, Dalton's more the better of the traditional tight end than he is, but you just outlined just the versatility of Brant Keithy. That all being said, one spectacular year trumps probably 2 or 3 really good years, in my opinion. Okay. And especially coupled with a really good year the year before.
And when that spectacular year had one of the most impressive single game performances we've
that
ever seen.
no one's ever going to forget around here. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So I'm starting Kincaid,
All right.
benching Brant, and unfortunately cutting Jake. But that one, when you got those other two guys, sorry, Jake. Like, that's really the only option in my mind.
It's hard to make a case that you don't have. Now there are people. I got to scroll down to find them, but there are some folks on the old tweet machine at Real OC Sports that are they're cutting Keithy because of the injury situation.
Yeah,
but
I suppose that's fair. But even in his limited, in comparison, his limited availability, his numbers are still much better than Jake Murphy's, who was available the whole time.
Peace, Love, and Utes is just completely skirting the system and says 13 personnel. I'm starting all three. You can't.
Flag on the play.
Pre-injuries. Now, this is why these are interesting conversations because, like, you're supposed to take the body of work over the course of the career, right? Pre-injuries, it's Keithy, Kincaid, Murphy for this person, but there's mostly people are starting Dalton Kincaid and benching Brant Keithy, which is the numbers say that Keithy had 1,000 more yards. And how many more touchdowns did we decide?
There's 28 total touchdowns, 22 receiving.
So, yeah, 16 total touchdowns for Dalton Kincaid. It tells you how frustrated people get with injuries, and there's a recency bias against the Keithy injuries because it hurt you again.
It does.
Last year.
But also, you got to take into account Keithy played basically double the amount of games, and like Dalton plays one more season, he may get close to those numbers. Certainly gets closer, exceeds touchdowns. Certainly gets to 2,000 receiving yards, if not higher than the 2,300 something that Brant got for his career.
2387.
2387. Like, in 2.5 more seasons worth of games, Dalton for Brant, Dalton probably needs only one more season to at least be comparable in those numbers, which for me, it's like what we were talking about kickers and Matt Gay. It's like the trajectory matters to me as well. So that's why, unfortunately, because I love Keithy and I thought his upside was higher than Dalton's, but because of the injuries, we weren't ever really able to see that upside. So that's why I start Dalton, bench Brant.
All right. Keep them coming at Real OC Sports. Start bench cut Brant Keithy, Dalton Kincaid, Jake Murphy, and then start bench cut your outdoor summer experiences. Campfire, lake day, beach day, river day, or pool, water park, splash pad day.
You cut campfire, I cut you. How about that?
Whoa. Whoa.
Oh, I'm sorry. Cut you from listening to the show.
All right. I thought
not physically.
with a knife. Which,
But
by the way, also happens around a campfire a lot. You're whittling.
Yeah.
But that's a formative experience in your life.
Unless you got your totem chip, then you know how to do that safely. So, shout out to Boy Scouts.
877-353-0700. Tell me who you're starting, benching, and cutting. Take a quick one here. We come back. We talk Utah Mammoth and Caleb Desnoyers. Number 4 overall pick. And we'll talk about the rest of the draft. Guys on ice today in Salt Lake City. Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700, 92 FM, proud part of Utah's ESPN Radio Network. Start your engines. ESPN 792 on FM is excited to announce the first ever Monster Jam World Finals coming to Utah July 4th and 5th. We've got a pair of tickets in topical trivia right around 1:45 right here on the Sean O'Connell Show. Tickets are also available at Ticketmaster.com. Tom Callahan joins us, Utah Mammoth Insider, host of the Inside Utah Mammoth Show, and our resident NHL insider, talking about the recent draft, free agency, which starts this week. Tom Callahan, welcome back. How are you?
Well, I'm kind of excited. This is a heck of a day already for Mammoth fans, and free agency right around the corner. It's kind of like the kid in the proverbial candy store, right? There's a bunch of shiny new things to look at and some fun stuff, and then you see what you got enough money for.
We have a lot to talk about. I haven't picked your brain yet about Peterka coming. We haven't talked to Caleb Desnoyers. I'm excited for all of it. Whatever happens in free agency, it seems like this Mammoth team is ready to be interesting and aggressive, and we'll see how it plays out. But let's do it chronologically. No one is happy to see guys that you fall in love with in the first season in franchise history go away, right? No one wanted to see Kesselring or Doan on a different team. But what you got back, I was looking at your tweets about it, watching some of the highlights, all this stuff. Everyone's got to be excited about the top six potential of the man from Buffalo. But tell me your thoughts on that trade.
So J.J. Peterka was actually somebody I was hoping the Mammoths would at least take a swing at, because Peterka is a guy who has shown nothing but improvement his 3 seasons of pro so far. He's young. He's only 23, has some upside. And quite frankly, Buffalo has been suffering for a while as a franchise, which pains me as a Buffalo native. But it's been 14 years since they've made the playoffs. And I understand that there are just players who don't want to be there right now, and Peterka was one of them. He wanted to go someplace that he could try to win. The Mammoth are a franchise on the rise. And last year he had 68 points. He is definitely a guy who will shoot the puck. He spent a lot of time on their first power play unit. So, you look at adding him into the mix, into the top six mix for the Utah Mammoth, and it's fantastic to just see what that top six could be, and that first power play unit should be even better. It had some problems at times scoring when it needed to, and I think Peterka gives them that extra boost there. Doan was a guy who still hadn't quite figured it out. He's also young, but was still kind of, is he third line, is he fourth line, up and down with the American League. Hadn't quite fulfilled his potential that they wanted yet. Kesselring was a tough guy, would stand up for his teammates, loved the fight he brought every night, but right shot defenseman, big guy. Buffalo wanted to get bigger and more physical on their blue line, and I thought Kesselring's game also was taking a little bit longer to find itself. He was still making some pretty big mistakes out there that I think they wanted him to eliminate, and he just didn't quite get there this year. So they're deep on defense, so deep on defense. They have a lot of good options, even right-hand shot options, and I think moving those two for Peterka was a no-brainer.
So getting back to how Peterka fits in, we saw this past season, Coach Bear had to – he shifted lines around, and especially on the blue line where there were some injuries and things like that. We saw a lot of different pairings skating there. We saw a lot of different rotations and finding, I guess, the right people to skate with the right people. Now, depending on who you talk to in the NHL, there are some players who, no matter who they're out there with, no matter what situation, they're elevating the level of play, right? Those are the great players. Does Peterka need to be skating with the right guys? Is there going to be a lengthy process in trying to figure out who he matches up with best in these lines and if that first power play gels with him, et cetera? Or is he kind of a universal drop him in and just watch the team get better type of guy?
I think he's going to need to find the right personnel. One of the complaints about him coming out of Buffalo is that he's a defensive liability, and quite frankly, he does not spend a lot of time on the defensive side of the game. I hope that changes in his game. I would really like to see that. So for that reason, who you pair him with is important because they need to have defensive responsibility. But that said, if you understand what you're getting with this guy, you can plug him into a lot of situations. You now have two guys who are not afraid to shoot the puck in Gunther and Peterka. Plus, you've also got, Keller can distribute, can also shoot. Cooley can distribute, but can also shoot. Schmaltz. I mean, we can just keep going down the list of the forwards. But to have a guy who wants to shoot the puck, I think is important. And so if you put him with a distributor, someone who can get him the puck, I think Utah has a lot of those guys. I think, quite frankly, there were times where they wish guys would shoot more. But, you put him with someone who's going to take care of their own end, and then, you set him up for some shots. Anywhere in a top six role, I think he's going to fit in, whether it's first line, second line with the Mammoth. I think it will take a little bit of time for him to find that perfect chemistry, but he's going to be an impact guy pretty quick.
In the last hour or so, the Mammoth traded Matthias Michelli to Toronto. What are your thoughts?
Michelli going to Toronto, not a huge surprise. Not that he went to Toronto, but that he went, period. I think the writing was kind of on the wall that he hadn't quite panned out the way they wanted him to. What I like about this trade is that it's conditional third-round pick from Toronto. It can become a second, and there's two conditions. Number one, Michelli hits 51 points next year, and Toronto makes the playoffs. Well, they're going to make the playoffs. The other one is if he hits 51 points. Now, why that's a great threshold is because if Toronto brings him in and they give him a shot at the top six, which the Mammoths have done in the past, i.e. Coyotes, he could catch a spark alongside somebody there in Toronto. Who knows if he somehow finds chemistry with a guy like Austin Matthews, he's going to get 50 points. So I don't mind that at all. It could elevate it to a second-round pick. For a guy who didn't fit into your plans and gives you that extra contract, that extra roster space, and a little bit more cap room, not a ton more, but something. I think that's fine. You're getting some assets back for a guy that you just didn't see fitting in anymore, and it shows us how the Mammoth are changing their focus from be competitive to make the playoffs.
Tom Callahan, our guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show, talking Utah Mammoth. I think the number 18+ million in cap space for this Mammoth team, but Bill Armstrong says, hey, you can't spend it all right now. We want to get better, but we can't spend it all now and prevent ourselves from being great, 5 years down the line. So as free agency opens up, how aggressive do you expect this team to be?
I think that somebody like Mitch Marner is off the table for them, the real high-dollar talent, and there's not that many of them left now that Bennett decided he's staying in Florida. If anything, they might do something short-term that might be a little bigger, but look, they've got a contract extension coming up for Logan Cooley here that's probably going to be somewhere between 7.5 to high 8 a year. So that's going to be coming up for him, and that'll be like them spending money in free agency almost, if you will. Plus, I think they did a nice job addressing their needs. Because of the uncertainty with the backup goaltender position, we would like to expect the best, that Connor Ingram will be back and it won't be an issue, but I think I could see them spending a little bit on a backup. It's a thin goalie market this year. They're pretty well set on defense. Honestly, if they shore up a little deeper, like a 5-6 D or a bottom 6 forward, it never hurts to have depth. Believe me, we learned that last year, right? Like, defensemen were dropping like flies. They needed defensive depth last year, and they had to kind of acquire it on the fly. So if they picked up a little bit more, I don't think it'd be the worst thing in the world. But I think the outlook has changed. The Peterka trade, really maybe reset that goal for them a little bit. They'll be interested and active, but not spending a ton.
All right, let's get to this recent draft. Caleb Desnoyers is the name who's called to the Utah Mammoth at number 4. What do you like about his game? What do you like about his fit with this team?
I like him a lot, and actually like him even more after learning that he basically played the entire season since November with a couple of nagging wrist injuries. Like, both wrists were hurting him. And to see what he still did, how well he did in the face-off circle, the points he put up, his playmaking ability, he has crazy vision. I posted on my Twitter account the other day. It's a long video. It's 15 minutes of highlights. But the passes he makes, the way he can see ways to put pucks through, whether it's a shot or a pass, is just pretty incredible. And he really kind of carried his team to a QMJHL title and then into the Memorial Cup tournament, which is for the 3 top junior leagues in Canada. Their champions meet in a tournament. They ended up in the semifinal there. I think he is a very, very talented player. And in the long run, Utah now has several candidates, along with Logan Cooley, who's already on the team, who could be a future 1C, a first-line center. TJ Ginla could be a center, might end up on the wing. Denoyer could be a center, does play center right now, could end up on the wing. And if either one of those guys are your second-line center and Cooley's your first-line center, I think it's great. So good pick, really skilled, 6'3", doesn't hurt. And I think I really like the vision for where he slots in.
He did say he wants to surprise everybody and then make the team in his first year. Is that a real possibility in any way?
Sure it is. I mean, absolutely. Every year in training camp, you have guys who surprise you. If he comes in and he is better than any other option you have at second line center, or maybe even third line center, I think you look at keeping him. Now, look, the general rule of thumb is no, we're going to send you back and we want you to develop. But I love that. I love that hunger. I love that attitude. And you know what, man, if he comes in and he just destroys it and tears it up, leading scorer, all that, yeah. I mean, you can keep a guy for up to 10 games before their entry-level contract kicks in. And if you have, 5 to 7 or 8 games, you have a look at him in the NHL, then send him back to junior. Maybe he gets a taste of it. I don't mind that at all.
Were you surprised by anything in the top part of this NHL draft?
Not necessarily when you really kind of break it down with hindsight. Maybe in the moment, we're still looking at, there's still some possible fallout from it. I think a lot of my friends in Nashville were a little upset with the direction of their pick, but it makes sense based on the way Nashville wants to play the game. I liked James Hagens. I know he fell a little bit lower in the lineup, and Porter Martone fell a little bit lower, but not crazy low. I think a lot of guys went where people thought they would. The one thing that's kind of still out there, the Islanders said they didn't want to trade Matt Barzal, and of course the Mammoth are still linked in those talks, and that's a $9.5 million cap hit if they could pull it off. But I think for the most part, the Islanders not being able to trade back up to get to James Hagens might have been a bit of a surprise, but all in all, I mean, nothing that really was shocking out of it.
Besides Caleb Desnoyers, because of course we all got to lean in on him, did you have a favorite player in this draft?
You know what? I liked Porter Martone and James Hagens. I really like both of their games. I'm not going to lie. I have my fingers crossed that for some reason Michael Nisa was going to fall to number 4 because I think he's going to be a dominant NHL player. But I mean, he went second and should have to the Sharks. So those guys are going to be sharp. I really believe that, this year's class was better than people think now. And of course we won't know for another 5 years, but I really do believe this was a deeper draft than people gave it credit for. So, you couldn't have gone wrong with whoever you did pick at number 4. And the other thing too is obviously Schaefer, the number 1 overall pick, his story is great. Like, he's been through a lot of personal tragedy and just seems like such a humble kid, such a good kid. Like, his mom passed away, then his billet mom passed away like 2 months later, and everything he's been through, I think he's maintained a humility and a focus that really makes him hard not to root for.
Before I let you go, look, the first round picks are always the sexy thing to talk about with any franchise. But we have a history here in this state with professional franchises finding value later on, finding value in the second round or later. So is there anyone a little bit further down this Mammoth draft list? They're getting kind of like BB plus draft grades from some of the publications. Is there anyone further down the draft list that you think might have an impact on this team sooner than later?
Recco Alonco, I like. They traded back in to get him late in the 6th round. He's big. He's physical. Pretty good hockey sense, right shot. I mean, that is the Bill Armstrong prototype for a player. So I like him too. Then there's one that's a bit of a reach, but could really be huge in net, was Ivan Kochetkov. Good size, good glove. He's 17. Mentally, his game is not there right now, but I think if he ever puts that together physically, he's got the tools to be a very good goaltender down the line. So again, that's probably not somebody we're talking about for that 4 or 5 year window minimum. But I really do like what they did in the draft.
No Americans drafted, by the way, by the Utah Mammoth. Is that weird?
You know, you would think so, and it's interesting to hear everybody talk about, especially the Eastern Europeans, but if you look at this scouting staff, they tend to find a lot of players over there that they just really like. And they really beat the bushes in Europe and in Russia. And you know what? You can like American players, but if they're not there when your pick comes up or you know, they're not the player you have rated highest on your board at the time, then you don't end up picking them. But they do seem to do pretty well digging into Europe.
Tom, always appreciate your insight and your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Tom Callahan, host of the Locked On Utah Mammoth podcast, NHL insider on the recent draft, and $18 million in cap space for this Utah Mammoth team. That's room to work. They've already addressed some of their needs. The Peterka trade is, I think, an awesome move for this team, even though, as I mentioned in my question there, you never want to see players that, you know, they had like a good story behind them too, the roommate thing, and they were like the stars of a buddy comedy. Kesselring did like to fight, and that was fun to watch. So Doan and Kesselring having to move on. You can easily forget because of the storybook start for this franchise and everyone just kind of like jumping on board without really asking too many questions. You can kind of forget that this is still professional athletics and it's still one of the most like cutthroat businesses out there, and you're just going to get shipped off even if you're a fan favorite and things like that. It was tugging at my heartstrings. I was seeing people tweeting like pictures of their kids with Kesselring gear on. Like, I got to tell this little boy tomorrow that his favorite player is now in Buffalo. I'm like, oh man.
Yeah, absolutely. But how long of attention span do those young kids have anyway?
Kids are resilient. It's
like
fine.
you're leading up to the
Did that ever happen to you, by the way? Did you ever see like one of your favorite players get like in their prime, get traded or move on or sign a free agent deal, leave your favorite team?
Nothing that gutted me. I think the biggest thing, the one that applies the most was Gordon Hayward. That gutted a lot of people around here, but by that time I was like a few years into my media career as a part-timer, so I'm not saying that I'd earned any like great objectivity, but I'd already really started to cement that mindset that like, hey, I am now mostly post-fan here. So guys leaving is a big story, but it's not that huge of a deal to me personally. So that would be the closest thing, but I wasn't as gutted as just about everyone else around here that was a Jazz fan.
The Joe Montana trade to the Kansas City Chiefs got me. I was 10 or 9 going on 10. But the thing is, you didn't have time to wallow in it because Steve Young took over and that team was great, right?
Yeah.
So, like, it was easy to not worry about it, to forget about it. And you know, like the Joe Montana to the Chiefs, it ended up being the right move for the San Francisco 49ers. But that was the closest one.
I take that back. The D. Will trade was rough on me, and I had heard the reasons why. I had heard all the stories around he and Sloan's clash, if you will. I still thought there was kind of small. It was kind of small time to trade a guy in his prime. This is at the time, a guy in his prime, because your coach, who was probably close to retiring anyway in the next couple of years, was really hurt by your star player. But with hindsight, it's actually kind of cool that the Jazz organization had that kind of loyalty for a legendary coach in Jerry Sloan, and Sloan had earned that. D. Will hadn't earned that loyalty, but your good friend now getting traded away was pretty gutting for me.
Okay, I'm glad you made it through.
Yeah, we're good now. Especially they made up before
Thank
D.
goodness.
Will's story, and they made up before Jerry passed. 7 years ago? So that hopefully for most Jazz fans, and the fact that he loves it here in Utah, still spends most of every year here in the state, living here and making a life here, should hopefully there's not the same kind of grudges that were held against him at the time.
877-353-0700. Shoot me a text of the trade that happened in your sports fan lifetime that maybe got to you. Usually it's when you're a kid. As you get older, you just kind of understand these things happen. All right, we're going to take a real quick break. We're going to have a very, very short segment on the other side. But Caitlin Clark continues to prove what a difference maker she is in the WNBA. Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Caitlin Clark, man, is an institution. I know that I'm not breaking any news or telling anybody things they don't already know, But whether you want to give her all the credit or not, or you think that we're finally just ready to jump on board with women's sports in the WNBA, the league has announced 3 expansion teams: Philly, Cleveland, Detroit. Going to be growing. Maybe we get one in Salt Lake City again at some point.
Bring back the Stars. Let's go.
Bring back the Stars.
Stars.
Stars with the double Z would be sick if they brought that back and did the same colorway, the same uniforms. All these
Well, then
young
you can
kids.
keep the SLC Stars G League.
That's right,
Because
they're
that's
different.
Stars with an S.
Yeah, that's totally fine.
Totally different.
All the young kids would be like, "What is with the?" they just young kids today could not understand the weird colors of '90s branding.
Yeah.
It's very strange. When the Pistons went teal and maroon and gold,
Yeah, that was
hideous.
Yeah. But here's the funny thing
But had
about
that cool like flame-breathing horse logo. That was cool.
Yeah, the logo was cool. The funny thing, the thing that I always laugh at is the amount of, with a certain amount of time passes, those jerseys become cool again. And it's like, no, they're still awful. They're just now vintage, so there's some cachet to them, but they're still awful. Let's be clear about that.
So the WNBA All-Star Game, they do fan votes, right?
Yeah.
2023, Asia Wilson, best player in the league then, and arguably still the best player in the league, led all vote getters with 95,860 votes. Okay? Fewer than 100,000 votes for the best player in the league to be the team all-star team captain and to be, an all-star. 2024, Caitlin Clark, 700,000. 7X.
Goodness.
What Asia Wilson, who is an established player, deserving of every accolade she's got, has an incredible shoe out now that I think you can finally order again because the initial, sell out every color has passed us by, and I think they're catching up manufacturing-wise. 2025, Caitlin Clark, almost 3 million, 1.293 million votes.
And she's missed a chunk of games this year. Because of early injury.
We talked about the difficulties that the league has had in embracing her and where some of that comes from, but this answers every question about, not for me, not for fans, answers every question internally in the league about how much people care.
Yeah.
Because Asia Wilson, she should have had more votes than that. We should have been paying more attention than that. But to have somebody go 13 times the number of votes, that's your best player in her second year, that is bananas. That cannot happen in any male pro sport. It can't. We've passed that threshold. It's just not, there's no one who can be 13 times more appealing and famous than LeBron James in the NBA. There's no NFL football player who can 13x Patrick Mahomes in 2 years or whatever.
Yeah, to your point, I don't think that it was quite that much of a disparity, but the closest thing we had was when Yao was in his prime, Yao Ming, because because a billion people in China were like,
okay,
I don't know anyone else in the league. Yao's the best because I know Yao and voting for Yao.
I stand corrected. That's the only way that something like this can happen.
Yeah,
if we get our first great Chinese national to come over and play in the NFL, or to come over and play in Major League Baseball, or to come over and play in the NBA again, I guess, or somebody from India.
Yeah, one of those places where they haven't had a great star before, and they just by sheer numbers can overwhelm votes. Yeah.
How cool would that be to see, actually?
It would be really cool.
If, some offensive lineman gets drafted by the Jaguars who's, from India.
Former sumo wrestler, offensive line.
Just some massive dude. And there's he led the Pro Bowl votes. He had 1 billion votes.
And listen, football people here in the United States think he's good. They don't think he's the best in the league, but they think he's good, and as long as that's the case, he's getting the votes.
and then you go to, one of those countries. And
that's the way it was with Yao, by the way. It bugged me because Shaq was still the best center in the league by far. But Yao was really good.
I think that
he was Chinese, and he's the first really good Chinese player, so he got just an inordinate amount of votes every year.
I think we underappreciate Yao because he's one of those guys who, even though he was great, he was never the best because Shaq was there.
Yeah, and T-Mac was on his team.
And also because, like, you know, they're just like that barrier, language-wise, culture-wise, and a lot of that sentiment you're talking about, people pushing back and just being like, well, he's the biggest star just because he's their only star, so I can't love him. But he was a really, really good basketball player.
I still liked and respected him, but yeah, I probably had less respect and love for him because I felt like it was a bit of a farce. But it wasn't really a farce because he was probably the second or third best center in the league for every year that he was making those all-star teams.
So maybe that's what we're seeing with this Caitlin Clark thing, is that there's all these people who are like, A'ja Wilson is better than her, but she's getting 13 times the votes without deserving that. Even though Caitlin is undeniably an awesome player, there might be people out there being like, but A'ja is better.
Asia's
not as popular.
All-time great, on her way to being all-time great. Caitlin probably will be at some point, but she's not there yet. I see it more as Steph versus LeBron in like the first couple years of Steph's brilliance, where it's like LeBron still is the better player, but Steph is the bigger attraction.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it was like, but you can't really, it's not, the arguments can't be completely tossed out of hand if you say Steph's the better player. Like, I think that Caitlin has, in the games that she's been able to play this year, I think she really is getting to that level where it's like, she's not all-time great like A'ja Wilson yet, but like she's in the skills that matter to her position, she's becoming good enough that it's not really a bad argument to say that she might be the best player in the league. I think she's starting to get there.
She's got it. I mean, accomplishment-wise, because that matters in all these basketball discussions. She's got to win a couple championships. A'ja's done that.
Yeah. MVPs
She's got
too.
A 3-time MVP, right? But yeah, it's at least the popularity contest, if that's all it is too thin. She's incredibly popular, and she's popular because she's a great player.
She's becoming one of the handful of best players in the league, if not better than A'ja Wilson and like Brianna Stewart, who's a recent MVP.
And by the way, do you see what has happened for Sophie Cunningham since she got traded to that team and became like the sidekick? It's like elevated her status in her career.
It has. So Olivia, who filled in for me a couple of times, she produced it for when Brian and I were hosting last week too. Like a week and a half after the actual incident happened, where she stands up for her against J.C. Sheldon because Caitlin Clark got poked in the eye and whatever. Olivia brings it up to me and says, "Have you been hearing what's going on with Sophie Cunningham?" And I'm thinking I missed something else because it was like a week and a half later. And I'm like, "Are you talking about when she did that hard foul on the girl?" She's like, "Yeah." And all she did was get poked in the eye. It's crazy. So yeah, like that. I mean, that's a litmus test for me as just what you're talking about, how her star and the attention on Sophie Cunningham has gone up just because she's become the enforcer for Caitlin Clark. Absolutely. Shout out to Olivia, by the way. Great work last week.
2289 comes in. Utah Basketball Club is going to be our WNBA team name.
Oh, yes. UBC. Absolutely.
Hey, by the way, we'll take a break after I say this. So I was in New York. I was flying out of JFK going to Chicago last week, okay? And in the wild, I ran into somebody wearing a Utah Hockey Club hat in New York City. You don't see that with our teams. You see BYU stuff sometimes because of the LDS church influence, right? You don't see Jazz gear anywhere else outside of Utah.
Unless they're tourists from Utah.
That's right. And you know how I knew this wasn't a tourist from Utah wearing a Utah Hockey Club hat?
Yankees shirt or something?
It was John Anik.
Oh.
The UFC main play-by-play guy. He's a very famous sports broadcaster, and he was wearing a Utah Hockey Club hat. And I ran into him in the security line at JFK Airport while he was wearing it. Isn't that wild?
That is wild. Way to go.
And I know John, so like we had a quick little conversation. I was like, dude, I love your hat. And he was like, yeah, man, I love their stuff. Now that the Mammoth, I'm going to have to get one of those too. So we actually have a team with fans outside of the state of Utah. How about that?
Let's go.
And prominent fans at that.
Yeah, first celebrity fan.
You're welcome, Utah. All right, take a quick one here. Okay, we're going to try to get Sarah Todd on the other side, but she's at Jazz practice, and if players are coming out, if practice ends and players are coming out for availability, like that's her main job, so we're going to be understanding about that. But right now the plan is Sarah Todd in 3 minutes on the Sean O'Connell Show, Utah's #1 sports talk, ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Welcome back to hour number 3 of the Sean O'Connell Show. Not deliberately, but I almost lied because we had planned on Sarah Todd right now, but I did throw the caveat out there that if her main duties call at the time that we actually get to her, then she's going to have to do that instead, and we're going to be understanding about it. And then 30 seconds later, that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, it's not great timing for any of the Jazz beat writers to be on the Sean O'Connell Show with where our show times are 11 to 2 today, because it's the first of the summer league practice today, and the practice just ended less than an hour ago, and players are just now starting to make themselves available to the media who covers the Jazz, including our great beat writers like Sarah Todd. So we'll try to get her on maybe Wednesday this week or next week, and get her thoughts on, have her talk about that great article, that great reporting she did on Ace Bailey before he decided ultimately to report here and say nice things about Utah, and just the latest with the draft and free agency and summer league. Yeah.
Is it the responsibility of the Utah Jazz organization to make Ace Bailey, and everyone else for that matter, but especially Ace Bailey, because of what we've heard, fall in love with this state? Or is it the responsibility of the community to make him fall in love with the state, because the community doesn't get a lot of access to him by design. Most of these players are relatively standoffish and they stay away. And when you're talking about like an 18, 19, 20-year-old guy, they're not, whether you're white, black, green, yellow, you're not going to see a lot of representation of yourself at 6'10", wandering around. Like, you can't blend in the way that Bees players, RSL players, Utah Mammoth players can. So traditionally, our basketball players have been the hardest to like find. They're the Sasquatches, right? You know when you saw them, you know where you saw them, because they stand out. And as a community, you don't always have a ton of access to them unless they choose to make themselves available. Like Donovan Mitchell did. And that was something that I thought was going to marry him to this community and, more importantly, this franchise forever. Because more than D. Will, more than Andre Kirilenko, more than Carlos Boozer, more than John and Carl and Jeff Hornacek, he was out there in the community.
Speaking of 4th of July this week, he crashed people's 4th of July cookouts, barbecues, whatever.
He was going to high school football games.
BYU and Utah football, basketball games, whatever, all that stuff. Like,
he was doing all of it, right? And the community was able to interact with him, and I thought that was like a successful kind of marriage, because it seemed like he loved it. He kept doing it. It seemed like the people loved it. Didn't seem that way. The people did love it.
Yeah.
So with Ace Bailey and every other player, but especially Ace Bailey, who's the onus on to get rid of the stigmas, to remind people that you really should experience a place before you make a judgment on what that place is? I'll admit this. I'm not a New York City guy. I don't like New York City. The last 7 trips I've had have been for work for the PFL. And with the exception of when I won my big fight and changed, the whole trajectory of my life because of that, I don't have particularly fond moments in New York City. It's rats everywhere. It's grimy. But the caveat is, James, that I did not allow for, I'm staying in Midtown Manhattan. It's disgusting. It's the worst place to go in New York City, right? This last week, when you were filling in for me, we had executive meetings that I got invited to because there's some big changes happening in the PFL, and our office is not in Midtown Manhattan, but it's not far away. It's just not right in Midtown, in the hustle, the bustle, the grime, the gross. It's not there. It's more toward Brooklyn, a little quieter, a little bit more, oh, look, there's brownstones. This is all right, this is a cool little part of the city. This is quirky. This is a little bit more hipster over here. There's not as many fentanyl addicts zombieing around in the downtown area, right? So, nobody took the onus to, see, New York's not that bad, but I just had to experience a different part of it to remind myself, the 15 square blocks that I've been spending all that time in, right next to Madison Square Garden, is probably the worst representation of what New York City actually is. So when you think of what Salt Lake City is for an athlete to come here, if Ace Bailey's life is a condo, a house, an apartment, and then the Zions Bank practice facility, and maybe, they go up to Park City, they go to the Delta Center, whatever, I don't know what you would come away with if that's what you do. I don't know the sense you would get of what Utah is or can be for you if you do that. I don't know if that's if he's more of a Donovan Mitchell type guy who's going to get out and really feel it and see it. But from the standpoint of what you can control as a fan base, what can you control as a fan base?
Yeah, I think the onus is on both. I think the onus is on both himself to be open to exploring.
Yeah, I didn't even put that out as an option. Of course,
to be open to the new experiences and exploring the area and those kind of things, and trying what we do here in Utah a lot of outdoorsy stuff, whatever it might be. There is a video out there of him. It was probably one of those Rutgers social media videos where hey, what do you like to do? And he says, I like to fish. And like, okay, well, there's plenty of places to fish in Utah. So if that was a real video, then there might be a chance for him to really enjoy Utah, because there's lots of good places to fish here. But I think it's on him, but I also think outside of that, I think it's on the people that spend the most time around him, and that's not going to be the fans.
Yeah.
That's going to be people in the organization. That's going to be his inner circle that maybe moves here, whatever members of his inner circle that move here to be with him, or if they don't move here, they spend a lot of time with him here. It's going to be on them to, in particular, the guys in the organization who know Utah. Ryan Smith, Utah is the best place on earth. Like, okay, convince this guy that Utah is the best place on earth. I think that it's probably those two groups of people, himself and his inner circle, to be open to new things, and people in the Jazz organization that know Utah, love Utah, helping facilitate those new experiences that they think are great. And be like, hey, you got to try this while you're here. And hopefully that's effective for a guy like Ace Bailey, who he himself has said he's open to playing anywhere. And hopefully that bleeds through to his representatives who were not open to him playing just anywhere.
Are we the only franchise in the NBA that worries about this?
I don't think so. I gotta think the Memphis Grizzlies, the Minnesota Timberwolves, the Oklahoma City Thunder. I mean, Thunder now probably don't have to worry about that
the
so
Thunder
much.
now don't, because the Thunder just come here and you get to win.
Yeah, but the Denver Nuggets, I think, and again, Denver probably less so than a few years ago, but those kind of small markets, which, by the way, Salt Lake's probably smaller than all of those, except for maybe Memphis.
Yeah, bigger than Memphis.
But it's those small markets. Indianapolis even probably worries about it almost as much as Utah does. Yeah. But the thing about Utah is you've got more than just buildings and places to go to. You've got they just look up at the mountains like, I wonder what's out there.
Yeah.
And for a guy like Ace Bailey, who allegedly loves to fish, he probably is going to be like, I want to see what's up there. What kind of great fishing spots are there, So.
Yeah, it's funny because, there is that whole narrative that has persisted about Salt Lake City, even as the city has grown and the population has shifted and everything's different than it was 10 years ago, and certainly way different than it was 20 and 25 years ago. And even though back 20 and 25 years ago, you had, two of the all-time 50 best players in the NBA who loved being here and loved playing here, and you had a success and you had a franchise that was kind of the model of fan support, at least. And now you've got a different situation. The other thing about it for me is, I know we do care, and I wonder how many other teams have to care, but I also wonder if we need to care that much with the way that everyone is so globalized now, and everyone is so, the whole scenario is so professionalized now. I know it's better if you like where you live and if you enjoy being, but did anyone get bothered that Aaron Rodgers, for the bulk of his career, by the way, not just when he became a weirdo, for the bulk of his career, Aaron Rodgers didn't spend off seasons in Green Bay for the most part. He had a house in Northern California. He had all the money in the world to go travel around and do whatever he wanted to do. I mean, there's a lot of people who have their primary residence not in the city they play in. Now, the NBA is a little bit different because the season's longer, a bigger part of your calendar year.
But it's still, you're playing 40 games, not 80 games in that place. You can have, you have less time between games, but you can spend the majority of the time. You're going to spend the majority of the time outside of Utah.
And by the way, the point you just made, whether you love living in Utah or not, Larry Markkinen loves living in Utah. He loves it here. That's a plus, I think, for the Utah Jazz as a franchise. That's a good thing. But also, Lauri Markkanen, just like every other player in the NBA, during the season has to spend all that time on the road. So even if you love it, during the season, the challenges of road life are going to exist. Now, maybe you prefer coming back to Los Angeles. I would be the opposite because you're coming back to traffic and smog and all that garbage. And if you're going to go on the road, places like that for me, and I'm not pretending that these players and me are the same, but visiting New York City, even though that's never been my favorite, fine. Visiting Chicago, going to work for 3 days in Chicago, cool. LA, cool. Houston, fine. Atlanta, great. Doesn't mean I would want to live in a place like that. They got the best of both worlds in the NBA where you can have access to all of the amenities that those cities have to offer you really whenever you want, because anytime you want to go back, you can fly there. But you're not married to that. You can have the peace and quiet that I think, maybe not for young players, but it seems like veterans eventually crave. It's just I don't know. I was watching this unfold this past weekend and thinking of, like, man, I don't even know if we're giving this Ace Bailey kid a shot to like Utah. Because, yes, his pseudo agent was just like, he doesn't want to be in any of these places. He only wants to be in New Orleans or New York or whatever. Like, okay, but you got to give it a shot. And I know that this franchise does a good job of bringing people in and being like, hey, you need a real estate agent? We can help you out. You need a personal chef? We can help you out. All franchises do that for their highly valued players. But I think the difference in this community is, if most of you listening have lived here long enough to know that, like, you actually are going to get to know those people instead of having them be like part of a transactional relationship for the most part. So my hope is that Ace Bailey could be the perfect one to break you out of this stereotype about Utah. He really could, because if you're the young guy who's just like, I wanted to go anywhere but here, and then you end up here and you're like, guess what? It's actually pretty cool. That says more than if you're like from Finland, if we're being honest.
Yeah.
And you like Salt Lake City. Everyone's going to be like, of course you do, dude.
Well, and even if it's like, hey, I'm young, got a lot of money, I have people who want to be around me, so I spend a lot of my time in some of these bigger cities that offer more of that kind of things, more of that kind of stuff that I'm interested in. But I actually really like coming back to Utah because then I can just take a break from all that.
Yeah.
Like, even if that's all the only reason that a top player, a top talent like Ace Bailey, can find eventually that why he likes it here, that's still a plus for Utah and smaller markets around the league that can offer a similar thing. Like, and that's probably something that maybe doesn't get sold enough, is that, hey, like, you don't have to live in that hustle and bustle. You can live here and go to that whenever you want.
The proximity to Vegas, by the way, if you got a nice plane,
for example, Vegas, yeah.
How many private planes do you think Ryan Smith has? Does he have just the one? Does he maintain like a NetJets subscription where he can access 5 at any time?
He may own one, but he probably rents a lot for like last minute. Oh, hey, I just gotta do a short trip to wherever.
Right there.
Yeah, or maybe he doesn't own any, and he's just like, why do I need a private plane? I can rent whatever.
Yeah, I mean, as far planes are like cars, right? Depreciating assets.
Yeah,
spending a lot of money on that, probably not the best idea unless you're using it all the time. But I don't know if you need.
And there's way more of those. I mean, you're in that world a little bit. There's way more of those subscription type services where you can rent a private jet short term, right? Like, yeah. We need one of those sponsors on the show. We do.
You know how sick that would be?
Every time you have a PFL engagement, you'd be like, you know what? You can save money on the plane tickets. we actually have a private jet service
Today's
in my
show is-
other job.
Today's show is brought to you by private jets.
Oh, man.
James is flying down to California to get the In-N-Out burger there instead.
Yeah.
How
Get a
sick
little
that would be?
fresher In-N-Out burger.
When you see the riders or the things put in contracts, like Lincoln Riley's contract at USC, you remember this, when it was like he gets to use the private plane that one of their boosters has, whatever. He gets like 4 weeks a year that he gets to use a private plane. Are you kidding me? That's the job right there. I'm saying yes to that job.
Yes.
Like, yeah, okay, I'll work for you.
Do the Kramer thing and say that before they tell you the amount of money. Free coffee for the rest of your life. Done.
Yeah. They're like also
Nope,
$12 million a year.
We don't need to
Oh,
pay
yeah,
him that
sure.
now. We don't
Great.
need to pay him that now because he agreed to on the coffee.
I'll do
thing.
it for 10 if you give me the plane still.
Yeah.
All right, got to take a quick one here. Sean O'Connell Show continues on a Monday. You're listening to Utah's #1 sports talk, proud part of Utah's ESPN radio network. It's ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Sean O'Connell Show on Utah's #1 sports talk. Don't forget, ESPN 792 on FM are announcing the first ever Monster Jam World Finals coming to Utah July 4th and 5th. Tickets are available at Ticketmaster.com. The Utah Jazz are finalizing a buyout with Jordan Clarkson, according to sources. End of that era.
Speaking of maybe young fans getting a little gutted today,
Yeah, JC's he's popular.
he definitely is, and he's the last. He was like the last bastion of when the Jazz were
Of hope.
contending.
He's like-
Certainly the last player that was on the 20 through 22 teams that were really good. And it's really the only guys that are really left are Ryan Smith, who just barely got control of the team, and Justin Zanuck. There's probably more in the organization that are a little more invisible to us. But of the notable guys, it was Jordan Clarkson, it was the owner, and it was the GM. Now it's just the owner and the GM.
Jordan Clarkson was, when they started coming out with the new trilogy of Star Wars movies,
Yeah.
and all the old actors were just like, I'm not going to be in these. I'm done with Star Wars. And then Han Solo shows up, and you're just like, yeah, yes, sweet. We still have one of our old favorites, and then Kylo Ren kills him, and you're just like, oh, no. We don't get any more of him. That's what's happening right now with Jordan Clarkson.
One of the coolest players the Jazz have had in a long time.
Coolest is a great way to put it. Like, there's people who've been better on the court.
Yes.
He was cool. He was balanced in the way that he was like brought that level of credibility, toughness, etc. to the floor, and was great with the fans without like watering himself down in order to be like, yeah, I also like drinking diet soda with coconut puree in it. You know what I mean? He was like, he was still Jordan Clarkson, but in a way that people really welcomed and embraced. So it's a bummer to see him go, but it's the right thing for his career. It's the right thing for this Utah Jazz roster, who, again, Austin Ainge, he said, we're not going to manipulate minutes. He's right. They're just going to get rid of all the good players on the team.
Yeah. All the good players probably not named Lauri Markkanen and Walker Kessler, but we shall see.
Yeah.
Who knows? Spence Checketts.
Walker Kessler's going nowhere, but
yeah,
Lauri is in that age where you're just like, do we want him to be 33 years old when we're good again?
When we're good again, yeah. Spence Checketts and Richard Smitty, last week during our live draft show and on the drive with Spence Checketts, they made a good point. Austin is not tied to any of the players except for the guys he just drafted.
That's right.
And R.J. Lewis, who they signed as a two-way player. And now he's the guy in charge. Justin Zanuck, Danny Ainge, Ryan Smith, Will Hardy, they can tell him and they can lobby for, hey, these are guys that are on the team that we still think are worth keeping around for a while longer, including those two guys, Lauri Markkanen and Walker Kessler. But Austin Ainge is coming in still with a complete outsider's perspective, and he could just be like, you know what, I hear what you're saying, and I also think those guys are good, but you know what? Other teams, I feel like they're valuable to other teams than they are to us. More valuable to other teams than they are to us. So if the Lakers, for example, who are in desperate need of a center, call us about Walker Kessler, I may just take their best offer. That's something we as Jazz fans and media covering the team must be open to. Now,
not
would
with
I
the
bet
Lakers,
on,
though.
Yeah.
Because if the Lakers if they keep a championship window open,
yeah,
and I don't know,
not good for the Jazz's future.
I don't know that Walker Kessler does that necessarily with LeBron on his way out, but like if Walker Kessler helps them win something meaningful, because weirdly enough, I'm fine with Oklahoma City being a champ. The LA Lakers winning another one because you gave them help for that is like, no, don't.
Yeah, that would sting. Now, would I bet that that's what Austin Ainge is going to do, is even trade those two guys this offseason or at the upcoming trade deadline, the next offseason? I would not. But I thought it was a great point brought up on the drive in our ESPN 792.1 FM draft show last week by Smitty and Spence that Austin has no emotional or professional. He's coming into this with no emotional or professional obligation to anyone on this roster. And now he kind of does have a tie because he's now drafted a couple of guys. But that's it. It'll be interesting to see just how many of the guys who have been on the roster the last couple of years, who have been key players, are going to be sticking around.
All right. So, got an email. It's not quite junk mail because it didn't come from Keeler McJunkin, but it is in that same vein because it pertains to Utah football and the upcoming Big 12 Media Days, which it's insane to me. That is next week. That's a week from tomorrow, Big 12 Media Days. Whoa. Here's what you've got. An announcement of the players who will be representing their schools. Now, typically, the Pac-12 had a system where it was, in fact, it was 2 players. And then they started to bring like 4 players. I guess at the Big 12, they're just like, bring whoever you want.
Bring 10.
So Arizona State's going to bring Sam Levitt, Jordan Tyson, offensive lineman Ben Coleman, defensive lineman C.J. Fife, defensive lineman Clayton Smith, and Xavier Alford, defensive back. So they're bringing 6 players. All right.
Okay. All right, sir.
Cool. Baylor's also bringing 6. BYU, L.J. Martin, Chase Roberts, Jack Kelly, Isaiah Glasker, Keanu Tanuvasa.
Ooh.
Oh.
Talk about what you just mentioned. We were talking about Jazz Lakers. A really good Jazz player helping the Lakers win a championship. That's got to be the Ute fan equivalent. Not to say BYU, Keanu Tanuvasa is going to help BYU win a championship in the time that he's going to be at BYU, but that's got to be the rivalry, the Holy War equivalent is a really good Utah player joining the rival, or BYU player joining the rival team, and then being a key part of a really good team. That's got to be it.
It is. It's an uncomfortable thing.
It is.
And that he's now, like, this is like team captain status kind of a thing.
Yeah.
You're the representative here.
At least leadership council type thing.
So,
yeah.
UCF is bringing 4 guys. Cincinnati is bringing 4, including their quarterback, Brendan Sorsby. Iowa State is bringing 5. Rocco Beck, Tyler Miller, Dominic Orange, Jeremiah Cooper, John Tez Williams. Kansas State is bringing 5. Texas Tech, Baron Morton, Caleb Douglas, Romello Height, Lee Hunter, Jacob Rodriguez, Caleb Wisniewski. So they're only bringing 2 of the big transfer players that they brought in their huge transfer class. So that's interesting. Colorado's bringing 5. That's going to be another fascinating thing here. How Colorado was its own entity at last year's Big 12 Media Days. They were it was like a major television show, or it was some kind of movie set when they walked on. Everyone's like taking pictures. They're walking past, and people just have their phones out. There's Dion. There's Dion. Has that luster come off any? There's no Travis Hunter. There's no Shador adding to the circus. So,
how much will Dion try to maybe try too hard to keep that luster around him without his 2 star players, including his son, with him at Big 12 Media Days? Will be interesting to see, too.
Oklahoma State's bringing 3 guys. TCU's bringing 6. Utah's bringing 4. Devin Dampier, Spencer Fano, Smith Snowden, Lander Barton are your representatives at Big 12 Media Days for the University.
No Caleb Lomu. Interesting.
Caleb Lomu's not going. I think that's. I mean,
no, that's a good.
You could have had like a. Here's something interesting. Aside from your quarterback, these are all guys who've been like freshmen out of high school committed to the University of Utah. There's other options. There's like the Levani Damuni type player that certainly would have a place here. He's a good communicator, etc.
Going to be a senior leader type guy, yeah.
You go with the guys who've been Utes and your quarterback because you got to take your quarterback. Although West Virginia's not taking their quarterback. Oklahoma State's not taking their quarterback.
Yeah, the quarterback should be required.
Houston is not taking their quarterback. Here's the thing. UCF's not taking their quarterback. BYU's obviously now not taking a quarterback.
Yeah, they probably were planning on it, but
yeah, no doubt they were going to take a quarterback, and now
that's
just
it's
not
up
do that.
in the air.
So here's what I'm going to do for my own preseason poll that we got rid of the preseason poll.
Yeah.
BYU notwithstanding, because they're in a unique situation. Everyone else who's not bringing a quarterback to Big 12 Media Days, just start from the bottom and build up there. Like if you don't bring your quarterback because you don't want your quarterback talking to the media, your team sucks.
Yeah, that's quite the admission about how you feel about your team.
My quarterback's not very good. We're not bringing him.
So how many teams did you list? 4 or 5?
I think there were
besides
5,
BYU.
So yeah, I think that if you take UCF, that you could throw them near the bottom.
So there's one.
Okay, you could take Houston, you could throw them near the bottom. Oklahoma
2.
State, I mean that's kind of weird. You could throw them
3.
And West Virginia. Yeah.
So
that's your bottom 4.
So 4. So tied for 12th are those 4 teams.
You build from the bottom there,
and then decide where you want to put BYU. Maybe not 11th, but probably not that high in the top 10.
We're going to spend actually
probably somewhere in the middle.
I wanted to get
and then everyone else.
My statement on the whole thing today, right?
Yeah.
I wanted to get that out of the way in the opening segment. Tomorrow we're going to spend some time on the quarterback room, like for real, what they have now, and how it compares with the production they had last year. Because I know there's a lot of BYU fans who are really up in arms here, but I mean, especially if you take some of the biggest games, you take that Utah football game or whatever. When I tell you what Jake Retzlaff's stats were last year against Utah in a win, you're not going to be like, as a Utah fan, you're not going to be like, well, as long as he's gone, we're okay. It didn't kill you. So, anyway. Those are your representatives for each school at Big 12 Media Days, which is a week from tomorrow. We will be there because we're your home of the Utes. And if you can't hear it live, we will have all those interviews on the podcast. We'll have all those interviews at ESPN700sports.com. They'll be under the on-demand tab. We will be making sure everything is cut up, trimmed, and distributed properly. So if you can't catch us live, we're going to go. We're going to go as long as there's people to talk to, right? What are that? That's going to be what, 5-6 hours of live radio each day?
Probably
James?
6 hours minimum. Yeah. And we'll let everyone know what time it's going to start. We don't necessarily know that until right before, when they're going to let media in and when some of those podium interviews start happening. We'll start the show at the beginning of those, and once we get that schedule, we'll let everyone know about that.
Also, this is at the Dallas Cowboys global headquarters, so there is a decent chance that I get arrested for some kind of vandalism, and maybe like halfway through day 1 or before
or get
day
a
2.
stare down from Jerry Jones.
He's not gonna be there. They just wheel him through on whatever robotic chair they make him use when he's not in front of a camera. Anyway. All right, we'll take a quick one here.
Hey, real quick, speaking of the app,
Uh-oh.
have you seen the update that's been made on the app?
What is it?
You can watch our YouTube videos
Is that true?
live on the ESPN 700 app now. It's pretty sleek looking.
You know what that means, James? The Sean O'Connell Show, and that, by extension, me. I'm in your pocket at all times, people.
Absolutely.
Anytime you want, you could just pull that app up, and there, boom, my face. At least in your midday from 11 to 2.
And Spence Checketts from 2 to 6.
Yeah.
Same
Spence-
deal.
Spence is in your pocket from 2 to 6.
What could go wrong? With Spence and OC in your pocket from 11 to 6 every day. But it is really cool. I encourage anyone who maybe has downloaded the app before, hasn't opened it in a while, go check out the new app. Shout out to Bryce Larson for all the work he did to update that for us and get our videos on there. From at ESPN 700 Sports Utah. Then you don't have to go on YouTube to find it. You can just pull up the app. And if you haven't downloaded the app yet, it's better than it's ever been. So it's a great time to download it free in your preferred app store. ESPN 700 app.
Before we take a break, this is a great text from 1804 on the text line. My favorite Jordan Clarkson moment was when someone from the local news was interviewing random people on the street about how excited they were about the upcoming season. The interviewer had no idea who he was, and he didn't say anything about being on the team and just answered questions about the team. Do you remember this?
Yes.
Was it at Gateway that they were doing
it
this?
It was
or at City Creek?
No, it was City Creek, outside of City Creek, and they're like, "Have you been to any Jazz game?" And he goes, "Yeah, I go to every game.
I go to every game.
I'm at every game."
was such a classic moment.
It just shows how nice of a guy he is too. He didn't no part of him, anytime he got some kind of spotlight and someone didn't know who he was or whatever, was like, well, come on, you got to know who I am.
Yeah.
He just was like, no, like, I'm going to stop. I'm going to let this this poor news reporter who doesn't know who I am, stop me and ask me questions about the team I'm on. And I'm just going to answer her questions. It's an amazing moment.
Awesome. All right. We'll take a quick one. We'll wrap it up with Spence Checketts and some crosstalk as get you ready for the drive on the other side. It's ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Welcome in once again to the Sean O'Connell Show. Spence is right up against it, so we will skip crosstalk for now. Hopefully we can get him in the final couple minutes of the show. Started today talking about a frustrating situation, an ugly situation in the rivalry. I will say this. BYU-Utah is a fantastic, incredible in-state rivalry. 40 miles or so separate the two schools. The fan bases are intertwined with one another in every possible way. Coworkers, family, friends, etc. Right? A serious accusation and charges and then a case being brought up and dropped and more accusations levied and stuff like that should not pull you out of your fan mode, I care about the sports and I want to watch the games, and make this a personal, nasty thing for you. So do your best, all right? This could devolve. I think maybe now that it seems like some closure is coming with what looks like an eventual transfer for Jake Retzlaff, and we'll still have to see about immediate eligibility. The transfer portal is closed. I was told today that he already earned his degree last April. He earned his degree. So a grad transfer possibility is different, but also there is the question for a lot of teams. First of all, the timeline is not good. And when I say the timeline is not good, I mean, like, how do you integrate yourself from July onward as a starting quarterback?
He may need to accept a backup role at the next place, but who knows?
I really think, here's my hot take for the day to close out the show. I really think Jake Retzlaff should stay at BYU. He would eventually be your starter. That fan base, that school, say whatever you want, make your criticisms about the honor code situation. People who have honor code violations and stick through it and stay are eventually, they have become some of the favorite guys that have ever played at BYU. They're legends at BYU. Now, you got to be a good player, and we learned about Jake that he's at least that. But I understand why you would maybe not want to, but here's the other thing, dude. You signed the thing. So even if everything happened the exact way that you said it would happen, you signed something, and then you didn't obey those rules, and now if there's consequences for not obeying those rules, other things are outside of this particular conversation. That's a piece of accountability that you can be willing to accept and say, all right, I'll serve my 7-game suspension. I think that this team is good enough that we're still in the hunt for a conference championship. If that's what's important to you, although, maybe we don't know exactly how things have been handled internally down there. We don't know if he's going to be welcomed back. I know enough about Kalani Sitake, I think, that he would, if it were up to him, he'd say, yeah, you're always, we can help you work through this personal stuff, whatever it is. But anyway, the situation got really, really ugly while I was watching it unfold in the whole, the denial and the court filings. And then eventually today, this morning, for those who didn't hear the first part of the show, case was dropped. The civil case has been dropped. It's not something he's going to have to fight anymore. Reminder, last thing I'll say about it, for you as a Utah fan, a suspension for Jake is not a win, okay? For you as a BYU fan, an accusation being tossed back at a Utah football player instead, that's not a win for you. This thing being dropped is not a win for anybody, all right? We don't know what happened, and the best case scenario for everyone involved is that you can salvage something, pick up the pieces, and move on. It's not a good scenario for anybody. So don't strut around on social media or anywhere else like you know what's going on and that your side of this, whatever you think that is, gets the victory here, because nobody does. All right, Spence Checketts in the driver coming up next. Hey, Spence.
Straight from the airport, Sean. You know what that's like.
Yeah, I did that last week.
And we were a little delayed on the tarmac because one of those things you're landing. You're like, dude, I got to go like right now.
The worst is when you land and then they're just like, we got to wait for someone to come extend the jet bridge. You're like, this is a very first world problem.
Yeah, and also this isn't the type of job where you can be tardy. So I'm just looking at the clock. I'm like, okay, how are we going to make this work?
Well,
but on the ground, ready to roll. Good to see you. It's been a minute. Hope you enjoyed your time off.
I did.
Good.
It was good. Before I get out of here, really quick, start, bench, cut. Okay. Are you ready?
I am.
Summer outdoor experiences. Start, bench, cut.
Ooh.
Campfire night.
Okay.
Lake day, beach day, river day, whatever your favorite outdoor water day is.
Mm-hmm.
Pool, splash pad, water park day.
Ooh.
Start one, bench one, cut one.
We got to cut the water park day because there are several things that could go wrong there.
Okay.
Health issues and such.
Yeah.
I will start the beach day.
Okay.
And then we'll bench the campfire night.
All right. That's how I called it too.
Oh, nice.
I think that's
great minds.
I think that's the right way to do it. More salient to the Utah football one that we've been throwing out there. Power era tight ends.
Okay.
Start, bench, cut. Kincaid, Keithy, Jake Murphy.
Ooh, that's a good one. You got to start Dalton.
Okay.
I think you got to cut Brandt. I think you got to bench Jake.
Okay. Wow.
I think that's because I mean we got to see Brandt healthy. It's been years.
Yeah, we got variation on all that. A lot of starting of Dalton Kincaid.
Yeah.
A lot of some starting of Brandt. I didn't see anyone start Jake Murphy. Is the only exception.
Yeah, I mean, you and I have talked about this. We'll look back, and Brandt was supposed to be what Dalton became.
Yeah.
And maybe still can. I mean, I don't know. Just poor kid can't stay healthy. Tight ends not as heavily featured moving forward for Utah's offense. Is that the deal?
We'll see. Coach Beck has said many times he's going to get good players the ball. He's going to adjust his scheme to personnel. But you saw some guys that maybe made an executive decision and transferred out because either they as individuals didn't feel like they were going to be used, or maybe they thought the position was going to be de-emphasized.
Yeah, and it's been such a massive part of what Utah football has been offensively under Coach Ludd forever. We'll have to see how it goes. Who did you start bench cut of the three tight ends?
Yeah, I did. I started Kincaid. I benched Keithy, and I cut Murphy,
Jake.
as much as I love Jake Murphy.
For sure.
It's tough because when you compare his production, it was a different offense.
Exactly.
And the quarterback situation was drastically different.
Right.
So if he would have been in that scenario, but by the numbers, it's wild because a lot of people did cut Brandt Keithy, but by the numbers, he doubled Dalton's production.
Yeah.
He just had 6 years to do it.
Yeah, and he just couldn't stay healthy, unfortunately.
Anyway. We'll keep having fun with Start, Bench, Cut, and you will keep having fun by listening to The Drive the rest of today. Sean O'Connell Show is over. We'll do it again tomorrow on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM, proud part of Utah's ESPN radio network.